Good morning. The April 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. We'll ask folks who are joining us today in person to ensure that all your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silent so you do not disrupt today's proceedings. For those of you joining us online, if you have an opportunity to present in front of the board today, I will ask that you state your name, the organization which you're calling in from, and then begin with your testimony loud and clear. At this time, I'll ask our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone, and thank you. We have a few things to note in the opening statement this morning. So bear with us so make sure we get this right. We do have a correction to note this morning for item SB 2411217. This item is from the Mayor's Office. This is grant funds supporting the relief services related to the Francis Scott Key Bridge. This is a transfer of funds. The amount of money and source, we are deleting $50,000 and inserting $1 million. And again, into the amount and source of funds. We'll also be deleting the original background and explanation and inserting the following. This action seeks to transfer $1 million to the Civic Fund to administer support and relief services to families, individuals, and businesses impacted by the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. These funds can be used for services that may include but are not limited to wage subsidies, career navigation, or other miscellaneous unanticipated costs resulting from the collapse. We have a second correction to note this morning for item SB 2411010. This item is from the Department of Transportation. Under amount and source of funds, please delete $392,829 and insert $290,453.00. We also have two walk-on items this morning. The first is SB 2411226 for the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. This is a governmental charitable solicitation application for the Key Bridge emergency response. And we have a final walk-on this morning, which is SB 10890. This is being walked on for the Department of Public Works. It's a rejection of all bids for WC 1372 water main replacements at various locations. This is actually a walk-on this morning for clarification for the board and audience because we had a technical snag with our program, and when we published the agenda this past Wednesday, the item did not actually print properly, so it wasn't legible. So that is the only reason this item is being walked on. It was received on time. It would have been a routine item otherwise. And the staff apologize and ask the board to kindly move this to the routine agenda this morning. We have the following protests to note this morning. SB 2410916. This is for the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs. It is a termination of grant agreement for the Pride Center of Maryland, Inc. A statement of opposition was received from Dr. Cleo Monago, Chief Executive Officer of Pride Center of Maryland. We have a second protest for SB 2410170, Department of Transportation. This was a minor privilege permit application for 1116 West Hamburg Street. A statement of opposition was received from Eleni Marcados and Dominic Carter, neighbors at 1114 West Hamburg Street. We have the following items that are being deferred this morning. SB 241100, Mayoralty Master Funding Agreement with Baltimore Civic Fund. This item is being deferred until May 1st, 2024, at the request of the Comptroller. And SB 2410892, Mayor's Office of Employment.
I thought that one was being deferred to the April 17th.
Just to the 17th, sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies. Let me correct that statement. This item is SB 2411044. This is an item for the Mayor's Office, Master Funding Agreement with Baltimore Civic Fund. This item is being deferred until April 17th, 2024, at the request of the Comptroller. Apologies for that. And SB 2410892, Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Grant Agreement with the Baltimore Civic Fund. This item is being deferred until 4/17/2024 at the request of the Comptroller's Office. The following items are moving to the on the non-routine agenda this morning. SB 24-10470, Department of Audits, Biennial Performance Audit, Department of Housing and Community Development. SB 24-10866, Department of Audits, Performance Audit for the Department of General Services. SB 24-11101, Bureau of the Budget and Management Research, Fiscal 2025 Preliminary Budget Ordinance of Estimates. SB 24-10836, Department of Housing and Community Development, Payment in lieu of taxes for Foxwell Memorial Apartments. SB 24-10700, Department of Housing and Community Development, Payment in lieu of taxes for the Hudson Valley Property Group, Westview Properties. SB 10916, Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, Termination of Grant Agreement, the Pride Center of Maryland, Inc. Again, a statement of opposition has been received. SB 24-11081, Department of Planning, Planning Commission Recommendation FY25, Capital Budget and Capital Improvement Program for FY25 through 30. SB 24-10940, Procurement, Emergency Procurement Shot Spotter, July 2022 through December 23. SB 23-14869, also an item for procurement, Contract 8000, Gunshot Detection, Location and Forensic Services, and API Subscription Services. SB 24-10170, Department of Transportation, Minor Privilege Permit for 1116 West Hamburg Street. Again, a statement of opposition has been received. And the walk-on item SB 11226, Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Governmental Charitable Solicitation Application for the Key Bridge Emergency Response. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. For the Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott, he's abstaining on the following items. SB 24-10183, Health Department Provider Agreement with We Care, Inc. SB 23-13570, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, Voices, Division of Infectious Diseases. SB 24-10111, Health Department Provider Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University Center for Communications Programs. SB 24-10491, Health Department, Johns Hopkins University, ending the HIV epidemic, Component A, Fiscal 24. SB 23-14092, Health Department Provider Agreement, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, Division of Infectious Diseases, I Want the Kit Project. And SB 24-11010, Department of Transportation, Research Services Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions, and Acting Director of Public Works Khalil Zaid has no abstentions this morning. We also have the following no votes on routine agenda items to note. The Honorable President Nick Mosby will be voting no on the following items. SB 24-10862, Amendment 1, Rough Roofing and Sheet Metal LLC. SB 24-10681, System Purchase Agreement with Precision Time Systems of Maryland. SB 24-10854, Amendment 1 for Autumn Contracting, Inc., On-Call Roofing Replacement and Related Work. SB 24-10861, Amendment 1, Cole Roofing Company, Inc. SB 24-11042, Amendment 2, Prime AE Group, Inc. SB 24-10862, Amendment 1 for Rough Roofing. SB 24-10719, Amendment 2, WBCM LLC. SB 24-10718, Amendment 2, Gant Burnett Architects. SB 24-10814, Grant Agreement, Baltimore Core, Inc. SB 24-11021, Provider Agreement, University of Baltimore. SB 24-10775, Amendment 2, Enterprise Support Staffing Services. And SB 24-10860, Correction for Grace City Church, We Are Us ARPA contract. Those are the only no votes for notation this morning, and that concludes our opening statement, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the opening statement.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. The opening statement has now been adopted. I would now like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated April the 1st, 2024, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes have been read by our clerk. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda for today's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda has now been adopted. The first item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 4, SB 2310470, Department of Audits. The request is to note biennial performance audit, Department of Housing and Community Development for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2022 and June 30th, 2021. On behalf of the audits, we have Mr. Auditor.
I'll just wait till the PowerPoint comes up. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board. My name is Josh Pash, and I am the city auditor here to present the biennial performance audit of Department of Housing and Community Development. Next slide. I'm here to go over the audit objective, scope, methodologies, our findings, and then take any questions. The audit objective, scope, and methodology. Next slide. To assess the controls and procedures, the home buyer incentive programs, including tracking what was awarded and paid out, when it was forgiven, and recovery when applicable. Our scope was fiscal years 22 and 21, and we worked with the DHCD Home Ownership Office and Loan Servicing Office. Next slide. Our audit methodologies is we interviewed key individuals from DHCD, conducted walkthroughs to obtain an understanding of the systems used, the loan application review and approval process, loan forgiveness process, and loan recovery processes. We also identified related risks and evaluated design of controls and processes and procedures. Then we judgmentally selected samples to test the effectiveness of the loan application review and approval process, loan forgiveness process, and loan recovery process. We confirmed that the duties are properly segregated, and we also validated that only current authorized personnel have access to the system, and those personnel have appropriate access to the system. Next slide. For this audit, we have no reportable findings in the public report. We do have one confidential finding. This is excluded from the public report because of security concerns, and the decision to exclude this information is based on government auditing standards, reporting confidential or sensitive information. And I will take any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Auditor. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Mayor?
I have no questions or concerns. I just want to say it's great to have a clean audit and thank Housing Commissioner Kennedy and her team for doing great work. And thank you, Mr. Auditor, as well.
Thank you.
I second that. Any other additional comments or questions? Are there any questions or comments to Housing? Madam Commish, do you want to say anything?
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. Just pleased to be here this morning and glad to be able to work with the audits team to look through this with the homeownership down payment incentives, and we'll continue to make sure that all of the correct checks and balances are there for the program.
Thank you, Madam Commish. Again, no questions or concerns? All right, this report will be noted. At this time, we're going to call up our amazing Deputy City Auditor, Ms. Tandy Mung. She's going to present to us the next item, which is on page 5, SB 2310866, Department of Audits. This is to note the biennial performance audit of Department of General Services for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2022 and June 30th, 2021. Madam Deputy City Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and honorable member of the Board of Estimates. My name is Tandy Mao, and I am the Deputy City Auditor for the Department of Audits. I am honored to be here to report you the implementation status of the management's action plans for the findings that we issued in biannual performance audit of Department of General Services. The original audit was issued in August 2021. In calendar year 2021, while we were doing 2 audits, DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, vacant building notices audit, and Department of General Services, building occupancy rate audit, we observed that there was a citywide issue related to citywide building inventory population and citywide occupancy rate calculation. As a result, we issued 2 findings and 2 recommendations and addressed to Mr. Mayor and Mr. Comptroller. And there were additional 2 findings addressed to Department of General Services. Another clarification that I want to make is you will see the wording we use real property throughout the slides, but the original audit was based on buildings, and we are primarily talking about buildings in this follow-up audit. Next slide, please. Our agenda includes audit scope and audit objective and scope, audit methodologies, and implementation status of prior action plans, and I will take questions at the end of my presentation. The audit objective is to determine the implementation status of management action plans for the prior recommendations, and we cover fiscal years 2022 and 2021. Next slide. To accomplish our audit, we conducted interviews and walkthroughs with personnel from Department of General Services, Department of Real Estate, DORE, and Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD. The purpose was to understand systems under their span of control, which impact citywide inventory reporting. Also, we reviewed the agency-provided supporting documentation, and we performed testing as necessary to determine if management-reported implementation status was supported. We appreciate these departments' cooperation extended to us during our audit. Special thanks to DGS team for their responsiveness, their coordination, and effective communication. Next slide. Finding 1 is related to building inventory population. Multiple agencies have multiple systems to manage real property inventory to meet their business objectives. However, there is no citywide efficient and effective and systematic processes or a centralized system to identify, record, update, and maintain a unified inventory of all the city real property, including city-owned property that is not utilized. Therefore, the city has the risk of not being able to efficiently identify properties that are not utilized. 1, we need to make informed decisions for a city new plan or a program. There are multiple causes of the issue. Number 1, there are no citywide formal policies and procedures outlining the roles and responsibilities of DORE, an effective agency for recording and maintaining a list of city-owned property. Cause number 2, the management and ownership of city-owned real property has become increasingly decentralized over the years. This, combined with decreasing communication and coordination, led to the current process of various agencies maintaining real property listing under their responsibility. Next slide. Our recommendations were City Comptroller work with the heads of other effective agencies such as Rec and Park, DGS, DHCD, Department of Planning, Department of Transportation, and Department of Public Works, and establish an effective and efficient city real property inventory system and processes, periodically record, update, and maintain a unified inventory of the city's real properties, and establish the formal citywide policies and procedures outlining the roles and responsibilities of DORE and effective agencies. Next slide. Management self-reported this finding as partially implemented. management stated that the city has acquired and implemented the Building Blocks Property Information System. Management believes that this system functions as a central hub to assist in the identification, recording, updating, and maintaining a unified inventory. Management stated that additional coordination with other effective agencies is needed to update policies and procedures that will outline the roles and responsibilities of the DORE and other agencies. Next slide. Our assessment is management did not implement the finding. The city still does not have a centralized software or a system or an agency coordinating information from cities' agencies to compile the overall list of mayor and city council-owned buildings which are occupied or not utilized. DACD implemented building blocks. The system tracks all buildings in the city of Baltimore, including MCC-owned buildings. However, it does not indicate whether MCC-owned buildings are occupied or not utilized. The DORE procured Visually software, and they are in the process of populating real property data assigned to DGS, as well as leases to and from private sector. This software will also be utilized to calculate utilization rates. DOD's legacy system continues to track MCC-owned buildings, but it does not indicate whether MCC-owned buildings are occupied or not utilized. Next slide. Finding 2 is related to occupancy rate. This finding has two sub-findings at macro level and micro level. At a macro level, city does not have a process to collect and maintain effective agencies' building occupancy and/or vacancy rates. Next slide. We recommended the mayor and comptroller require effective agencies such as BCRB, DGS, DACD, DORE, and DOT to calculate individual and overall building occupancy rates and/or vacancy rates in square feet, and work together to establish a process to maintain effective agencies' individual building occupancy rates and implement formal citywide policies and procedures that will include roles and responsibilities of the effective agencies. Next slide. Management self-reported partially implemented. We agree with their assessment. The DORE is currently in the process of licensing and implementing Visually software to fulfill the central database needs. Finding 2B, which is at the micro level, the DGS initiative to improve tracking building occupancy and vacancy rates is incomplete. We recommended DGS to establish and implement effective and efficient processes for the current data collection activities and document those processes in formal policies and procedures to calculate and record the building occupancy rate. Next slide. Management self-reported implementation status as implemented. Our assessment is partially implemented. DGS revised its processes to properly calculate the building occupancy rate for building under its span of control. However, formal policies and procedures were not developed. That assessment was as of December 2023, but recently we were informed by DGS that they implemented the policies and procedures. Finding number 3. Finding number 3 is related to unsigned occupancy agreements between DGS and tenants who occupied city-owned buildings, and the finding was based on City's Administrative 301-3, floor space requests and rent payments. We recommended the director of DGS to have a formal written lease or memorandum of understanding or service level agreement with tenants occupying spaces in city-owned buildings. Management self-reported implementation status as partially implemented, and we agree with their assessment. DGS identified and developed and signed occupancy agreements for all occupied spaces, excluding City Hall, and they submitted the list to the Real Estate Committee. However, the Real Estate Committee has not completed the review of occupancy agreements. In summary, we follow up on 4 findings. 2 findings were related to citywide. Out of those 2 findings, 1 was not implemented and 1 was partially implemented. For the 2 recommendations related to DGS, both were partially implemented. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention, and I will be glad to take any questions you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for the Department of Audits?
I have a comment, but it's not a question. But
You want to ask it now?
no, it's not for them.
All right, thank you, Madam Deputy. We're going to call up DGS.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Comptroller. My name is Berke Atilla, Director of Department of General Services. First, I would like to start by thanking the audit team because I have inherited this audit and I asked them multiple questions for me to understand because it's one of the most complicated audits maybe that I've seen because it's not just DGS but other agencies across the branches are involved. As the Deputy Auditor mentioned, the findings that they're presented were as of December 2023. So since then, we have had some updates, and I would like to present them to you, and I can take any questions that you might have. So the item number 1, which is to provide a citywide property inventory system and/or process. DGS now, I can say that I'm maintained and pleased to share that the current service list of all facilities that are managed by DGS, and please note that DGS doesn't share or have the capability to inventory facilities that we do not manage. But I have the list available, and then the list has been shared with the audits team. And all square footages of DGS-owned facilities have been verified and uploaded to our system and to the DGS service list. As it pertains to item number 2, providing a process to collect and maintain individual and overall building occupancy rates, DGS has now developed and maintains a system to track occupancy rates. Again, in DGS-managed facilities, as of today, there's a total of 5,600 square feet, or 0.2% of total space managed by DGS that is available for occupancy. That means we have about 99% fully occupied. And I also have this list available and the rates there. Square footage and occupancy data can now be pulled separately or used to determine vacancy rate in DGS facilities. Vacancy and occupancy data for DGS facilities is updated frequently and can be seen in the service list, again, being shared with the audits team. Number 3 is that to provide written occupancy agreements for all city-owned buildings managed by DGS. We have now developed and implemented a revised occupancy agreement as stated. It's a little different than the private lease. We use an user occupancy agreements. To date, 24 OAs have been submitted for review, and then 37 more are in the process for being completed. So on behalf of DGS, we believe that the items 1 and 2 have been sufficiently addressed. Item number 3 has been initiated in good faith, and through it has not yet been completed for all city-managed buildings. We expect to finish the task within the next 9 to 12 months, working directly with the ORE and the REC. So that concludes my statement, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you, Berke, for your great work. For your response to item 1, you talked about only the DGS managed properties. Just for the general public, can you talk about which other ones that you don't manage, like the ones that we made a lease out of, and can you explain that to the public?
Of course, yeah, that would be appropriate. So the definitions of the properties MCC-owned could span across multiple agencies, and as well as residential properties that may be vacant that is owned by HCD. DGS is tasked with maybe categorizing as administrative buildings and city-operated buildings where the city operates their operations. And within that, there's still segments that the DGS still is not directly responsible, mainly, for example, solid waste facilities for DPW, a couple of DOT agency properties, as well as some of the rec and parks facilities. Anything outside of that where we own and operate, city employees are there, fall under our realm, and then that's what we are responsible for.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you. This wasn't a question for DGS, but just more of a general comment that when you mentioned that you can only, you only have the authority to deal with the properties that you actually manage. And one of the things that I think we're moving towards is the Department of Real Estate has the charter authority to deal with all city-owned property. What we don't have is the resources that are spread across DGS, HCD, Rec and Parks, because over the decades, those agencies have come to have their own, in many cases, software packages for tracking the properties that they have under their authority. DGS is generally recognized as managing most city-owned buildings, but not all. And that is sort of the hodgepodge that caused the initial audit to say, we really do need to work on centralizing this. But that centralization has clearly not been something that could just instantly happen. What we have done, and I feel has been completed since the original audit, is we have real estate committee now working functionally on a regular basis in the way it was originally intended, which is to have all of these partners coming together on a regular basis, sharing information verbally about what their plans are. The next step, as we established 2 years ago, the next step is to get us to the point where we're all sharing data in real time. And that part, we probably should be also working with BSIT more on in terms of trying to identify, is there one platform among the ones we are all using that we should be encouraging everyone else to use? Or is the best we're ever going to get to is a place where we can tweak these programs into talking to each other? Or, God help us, do we have to all junk the ones we're using and get onto a third one that nobody is on now, but actually has the capacity to address all the individual needs of the individual agencies? And the model I would use for that is currently several agencies are working together on Unifier to deal with capital workflow, and that might be the kind of thing we need to move towards. But I look forward to continuing to work with the mayor and the city administrator and the agency heads, as articulated in the first finding, to take us through that second step, and then hopefully into the third step, where we have one unified collection of information that anybody can access, and we are capable of having people come to one place and be able to address all their real estate needs. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Is there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing, seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your responsiveness to the audit. Thank you to the audit department, as always, for providing a very detailed audit to the board. At this time, we will note this item and move on to our next. The first item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 8, SB 241101, Bureau of Budget. This request is to note the transmittal and proposed fiscal year 2025 ordinance of estimates. On behalf of BBMR, we have.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board. Laura Larson, City Budget Director. I'm here today to present to you the Finance Department's fiscal 25 preliminary budget plan. Just a reminder, the budget was formally released on Monday, April 1st, and is available for the public to review at budget.baltimorecity.gov. Before diving into the numbers, I want to acknowledge that the preliminary budget does not make adjustments or take into account any costs or revenue implications associated with the Key Bridge collapse. We're closely monitoring this ongoing situation regarding the overall economic impact on city revenues, as well as potential increased expenditures associated with the response and recovery. As we have additional information, the budget will be updated. That may be in the BOE recommendations that you will vote on next month, or through supplemental budget action post-adoption. Now, an overview of the fiscal '25 numbers. The preliminary budget is $4.06 billion. That is made up of $3.1 billion of operating costs and $654.1 million of capital expenditures. The recommended budget for the general fund is $2.372 billion, a 5% increase versus the fiscal '24 adopted budget. The fiscal '24 preliminary budget balanced a $107 million budget gap that was initially driven by expenditure growth that was outpacing revenues. The preliminary spending plan is balanced without reductions to city services or layoffs to existing city employees. The city's primary revenue streams remain steady, with property tax revenue projected to grow by 6.7%, or $65 million, and income tax projected to grow by 4.2%, or $18.9 million. On the spending side, we continue to organize the operating budget around the mayor's 5 pillars: prioritizing our youth, building public safety, clean and healthy communities, equitable neighborhood development, and responsible stewardship of city resources. I'll share some highlights on each of these pillars. In prioritizing our youth, we are sustaining the ongoing investment in city schools under the funding framework that has been established by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. In the 3 years since the implementation of the Blueprint, city funding for schools is up by $125.6 million, or 47.6%. In building public safety, the preliminary budget includes funding to expand the group violence reduction strategy to 2 additional police districts, while also continuing to make investments in the civilianization of various roles within the police department. In clean and healthy communities, the budget continues funding for weekly recycling and also invests $982,000 in building automation software for the Department of General Services to focus on reducing the overall energy footprint of city-owned buildings. In equitable neighborhood development, the budget invests $650,000 to purchase license plate reader technology, allowing the city to expand enforcement of parking regulations in parking enforcement areas. In responsible stewardship of city resources, the budget creates 5 new positions to support procurement transformation initiatives aimed at streamlining and modernizing the city's purchasing practices. In closing, I'd like to remind the board about the upcoming budget schedule. There are 2 special sessions of the BOE scheduled for Wednesday, April 17th. First, we'll have a formal hearing with the Board of Estimates at 10:30 a.m. During this briefing, BBMR will provide a detailed overview of the recommendations reflected in the preliminary budget, and agency heads will be present for this meeting. Later that evening, we will hold our annual Board of Estimates Taxpayer Night, where residents will have the opportunity to come and share their thoughts on the preliminary budget. On May 1st, we will return to present the final recommendations to the Board of Estimates, and then the budget will be passed over to the City Council for their oversight and review. For those looking for more details on the budget after the board adjourns today, we will be posting, again, the full preliminary budget publication is available at budget.baltimorecity.gov. We encourage residents to review the materials and reach out to my team with any questions regarding this year's recommendations. That concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Director. At this time, we're going to turn it over to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Director, I just want to say thank you. You and the budget team and the finance team presented this budget closing a gap without any cuts to services, and I think something that we should be very proud of, and we look forward to working with you, Mr. President, and the council to pass a budget that our residents can be very proud of. Thank you.
And she produced a Baltimorean in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And she did produce a
brand
new
new
Baltimorean.
taxpayer.
Yes,
He is
helped us-
one
very
more
excited.
taxpayer to help with the budget.
He's very
Thank you very
excited.
much.
Help us grow our population. We appreciate that, Madam Director.
Yes.
Mr. Comptroller? No? Any other
I make my
questions?
comments.
Well, as the mayor said, the council is eager to work with the administration. Madam Director, you've always been extremely responsive to the council. You know, as we've gone down this path of the council having new authority inside of the budget, I don't know it could have gone any seamlessly than it did last year, with all of us kind of learning on the fly to work together and to continue to build together. And we look forward to building on, I guess, the product that we were able to do last year. Again, thank you, Mr. CFO, for your leadership, as well as Madam CAO for your leadership in this entire process as well. With that, we will note this item. Thank you so much. The next item on our routine can be found on pages 55 through 57, SB 24-10836, Department of Housing and Community Development. This request is to approve a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot with Homes from Green Spring 2 Limited Partnership for Homes for America. On behalf of DHCD, we have
Good morning, Alice Kennedy, Housing Commissioner, here on behalf of DHCD. So this is the pilot. This is for Homes for America. This is what we call the Foxwell pilot related to Foxwell Memorial Apartments, which is at 3600 to 3700 Green Spring Avenue. It is an 8-story high-rise with 117 one-bedroom apartments and 37 two-bedroom. The nonprofit owner and developer is Homes for America. And this project is actually, it's recapitalizing a 4% low-income housing tax credit deal. And also, we also have funding into this from the Affordable Housing Trust funds as well. So 100% of the 117 units are encumbered by a 20-year HUD project-based Section 8 housing assistance, or HAP contract, as other people in the world might say. It's a HAP contract. And then also the 4% low-income housing tax credit restrictions require that the units also be at 60% of AMI. And we have the $1 million grant from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which will apply to 39 units that are going to be actually restricted of households below 30% AMI. And there's a minimum affordability period on that as 30 years. So in terms of different projects and how this happens, this is allowed under the Affordable Housing Pilot. And then we include in all the pilot agreements, they're based on the project must remain a qualified low-income project as defined by the Internal Revenue Code. So that is where our pilot agreement comes in. And then we also require within our pilot agreements that the owners do have to provide rent rolls on a yearly basis and financial statements as well, and to ensure that we have owners' compliance with the terms and conditions of the pilot agreement over time. Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Commish. Just real quick, just for the record, with this transaction, is there an agreement to make capital improvements? Well, first of all, do you have any knowledge of any significant capital improvements to this building over the past couple of decades?
I don't
You
have
don't.
any personal.
Is there an agreement with the new owner to make capital improvements on this property?
I believe that they are, for Foxwell, that they are doing some renovation of some of the units throughout this project for Foxwell.
Yeah, I think from working with members of the pilot committee and
Yes.
your team, that they've agreed to do like $14.5 million in capital improvements.
Yeah,
at
and the
least.
acquisition price, I think, is just below 10 million.
9.8 million,
Yeah.
you're exactly correct. And I think they also agreed to double the number of required UFAS compliant units. That's the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards units.
They are increasing accessibility on these as well.
So I guess, as it relates to like from a but-for analysis, but for us making this change to the pilot today, units that probably have not been renovated significantly in quite some time probably would not be renovated except for, again, this transaction and the doubling of the UFAS units and bringing the ones that are not currently in compliance probably would not occur without this deal. I guess, is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement to make that any pilot that comes before the Board of Estimates would not, it is a but for the affordable housing pilot, that affordable housing project, whether or not it has capital improvement associated with it or a smaller amount of capital improvement, that project would not be able to move forward. And like this one, in order to do that and some of the work, it's not only just the capital improvements, but also the Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant that's going into the project as well as the 4% LIHTC recapitalization. So all of it combined, if it weren't for that, then these units would not be able to be preserved and created in the city.
Thank you for that. At this time, Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I had a question about the monitoring. Like we collect information from the owners in all of these kind of projects, the rent rolls you're saying. Is there any independent verification component to that? Like, do we do a random audit periodically or anything where we know that the information that they're sending us is actually correct?
So the entity has to submit audited financial statements
For themselves?
for themselves. I cannot speak to that because the finance department, we at DHCD don't manage that part. So.
But do they have to have the rent rolls audited?
I don't believe so, but I'm not the person that would be able to answer that question for you.
Okay. That would be
be
also
a
finance?
finance.
Okay. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or concerns for members of the board? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 53 and 54, SB 241700, Department of Housing and Community Development. This request is to approve the payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot with the Hudson Valley Group, Westview Properties. On behalf of DHCD, we have
Alice Kennedy, Housing Commissioner, before you this morning to talk about the affordable housing pilot for Westview. This is the preservation of 508 units of affordable housing, which are across 4 different properties: Boone Manor on Pennsylvania Avenue, Orchard Gardens also on Pennsylvania Avenue, Green Willow on Pennsylvania Avenue, and Woodland Street Apartments on Pennsylvania Avenue as well. This pilot and project as Westview also ties to the Eastview pilot that was approved, I believe, several months ago by the Board of Estimates. I don't have the exact date, but the Eastview pilot was approved at that point. And it is this project, total development costs are about $44 million, $35 million on the acquisition price. The interior unit renovation is minimal on this this project, but there is building envelope work as well as site work and common area work that's happening in terms of repairs and capital improvements to the project.
Madam Commissioner, thank you so much. I guess just kind of speaking down the same pathway that we did on the previous item, and I know you kind of talked about it, I think it's important to explicitly state, there will not be any significant renovations of the 508 units tied into this deal, correct?
It is not a significant renovation of the 508 units. They're financing about $5.5 million in capital improvements total of the properties.
Now, the current owner that's looking to sell, when's the last time that they've had significant renovation of these buildings?
I don't have the information on.
One would assume, I've had an opportunity to go into this one of the units as recent as a month ago. One would assume that, by my view of it, there hasn't been any renovation done in quite some time, maybe decades. So I just didn't know if you had any specific information right there. I guess going down the path of like the but for us doing this pilot change, what's the benefit to the city?
The benefit to the city is the preservation and availability of the 508 units of affordability ranging from 50% AMI to 80% AMI in the units. Also, with the new owner, they are doing some level of renovation, and typically with these projects, they will put what they can in at the time of acquisition and what can be financed at the time of acquisition. This project is not utilizing a low-income housing tax credit for the project, but it does have a 20-year HAP contract as well as the regulatory agreement for the Fannie Mae financing, which is part of it. So one of the biggest components of this and the affordable housing pilot exists to be able to support the preservation and creation of affordable units across the city. So the but-for on this would be that we would not have 508 affordable housing units that are preserved for the next, for decades.
So what would happen? I think it's also important, before I go to my next question, only one of the 4 expires in 2024. Is that accurate? I believe the others expire in 2027, and one goes as far out as 2041. Is that accurate? The HAP contracts.
There is a new 20-year HAP contract, so those would go out to 20 years from now.
Yes, I have one at 27, the others out as far as 2041 is what we think.
Well, they're all being replaced by one single 20-year.
Got it. But I'm saying I'm dealing with the but-for. If we did nothing, one would expire in 24 and the others 27 and 2041, I believe. I don't know. Is that?
That could be, yeah.
Okay, we're just getting the information from the pilot committee. So I guess just really dealing with this but-for, when we talk about the fact that there's limited renovation of the units, and we talk about preservation, if we did nothing, what would we not be preserving?
Well, it is actually in this instance difficult to state because depending upon what ended up happening with the properties and the new owners of the property, and where and how those HAP contracts would be either maintained or not maintained for the future. So on this one, it definitely is tied to that we have an owner, the nonprofit partner with the Hearthstone Group, that is the nonprofit partner and coming in to ensure that the 508 units are all under one contract for the 20 years. So I think that we definitely would have expiring contracts on those properties in the near future under the 4 properties with the 4 different contracts. So we would have expiring housing payment contracts for those properties. So affordability would definitely go on those. And then also, I can't say in terms of what the potential would be for private market for another owner to come in and what their intentions would be at that point.
Yeah, we've gone down this path. It seems like more often than not in the past year, about my concerns around the way we leverage pilots, particularly as we talk about affordability in our communities. The reality is operating in an apartment building on the 1000 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, the 600 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, the 900 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, the 1500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, market rate is basically equivalent to affordability. And I say that because of the complete disproportionate amount of disinvestment that the city, the state, the country has done in communities like Pennsylvania Avenue for decades. The concern I have is the citizens of Baltimore, the administration, ourselves, this board, but for us making this deal, the owner could sell these properties. He just couldn't sell it at the inflated rate in which he's selling it. But for us making this deal, the concern that I have is that it's not coming with any significant renovations to these units that our citizens are sleeping in and being part of every single day. But for this deal, the idea that we are basically incentivizing nonprofit, I mean, we use the term nonprofit as this glossy, nice term, but nonprofit that hasn't really done any level of renovation for, again, units that we would never live in, or we would never want our children to live in, or we would never want to have our loved ones live in. It's just completely unacceptable. And I understand and see when we go down this pathways of doing pilots with new owners that are agreeing to make things right because things have been so wrong for decades, like the pilot that we all just approved. But to go down the pathway of doing this pilot, knowing that we have a new owner that's paying an inflated amount to kind of do business as usual and keep the units the same way that they are, I don't know that that passed the but-for smell test, from my opinion. This is the same owner that we did something very similar with in East Baltimore a couple months ago, as you stated, that I have major concerns of. And we're doing it at the tune of $311,000 in lost revenue every single year. I just do not understand and know why the city of Baltimore feels the need to be in the business to help owners like this sell their properties at inflated rates while we have our poorest residents. The entire building is 50% or below AMI, all 4 buildings, stuck in conditions that are inhabitable. I have major concerns with us doing pilot agreements like this. I do not see the benefit, and I can't find the but-for analysis associated with this. Mr. Mayor?
Madam Commissioner, just a question about the renovations to the units. It's my understanding that like roughly goes out to like $10K per unit. Do you know about what they're actually planning as far as renovations for the units?
Inside the units, it's actually a little bit less because the 5.5 million is also spread across interior of the units as well as the building envelope itself for capital improvement and weatherproofing and other, as well as additional site work that needs to happen at the buildings. So the interior unit renovations are less than the 10,000 because the total cost is spread out, also including the site work and the building envelope, which the building envelope does impact the tenants in terms of weatherization and other components there.
And that was my next question. Can you tell us about what kind of improvements they're going to make outside of the units and inside the units?
I don't know the exact improvement. I know that with building envelope work and then common area and then the site work. I don't have the breakdown on that. We do know that there are issues within the bathrooms, I think, that are being addressed inside the unit, and then some other minor components inside the kitchen also around water usage and water efficiency.
And we all know, Mr. President, I appreciate your concerns, and I think we all know the pressure that not just Baltimore, every city is enduring right now when it comes to affordability and affordable housing. In your opinion, Madam Commissioner, how important is it for us to preserve these units, understanding the global picture?
The global picture is that there is a significant need of affordable housing across the city as well as the state and the country. So it is important to preserve the units that we have and ensure that we have those units preserved as well as the creation of additional units. So any loss of an affordable housing unit will put pressure on the system in other ways.
And of course, I appreciate the great work of us in supporting partners through the Housing Accelerator Fund and ARPA to support the units that are being created. But can you talk about that, but also how you see these working together?
Yeah, it takes a variety of different types of affordable housing in order to make a rich, varied availability, everything from the 30% and below units, accessibility units, and that is where the Housing Accelerator Fund comes in, because those support some of our most vulnerable residents with disabilities and others, and those coming out of being previously unhoused, and then into buildings like these where it's a mix of 50% as well as 80% AMI units as well. So you have a range of affordability across the city, and there's a different range of how projects achieve that affordability and the length and time of the affordability based on the mechanisms that are in place, whether or not it's the low-income housing tax credit, which some projects take advantage of, some do not, other forms around the loans available through Fannie Mae, and then also through the HAP contracts as well that provide that housing assistance payment where the renters are going to be responsible for about 30% of their rent payment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just to kind of go down the line of questioning from the mayor and answers from you, Madam Commissioner, the fact of the matter is we have residents who are living in squalor, extremely poor conditions. We are going down this pathway of revising a pilot deal to sweeten the deal, to allow the current owner, who's done absolutely nothing to support quality living for our residents, to incentivize them to sell their property at a higher rate, which I believe is probably not market rate. It's not market rate because that's why this pilot is so important to put inside of the deal. It's the sweetener of the deal for some folks who live from out of town. They might be great folks, I don't know them. Maybe where they're from, they upkeep their units. But they're not deciding to buy in the heart of West Baltimore that probably has statistically some of the most troubling challenges of our city. They're not looking to buy these properties without any level of agreement from the city to fix them up. They're looking to buy and hold like the current owners have done. And I have major concern when we talk about affordable units, affordability and the decency of someone's living condition, to me, go hand in hand. And when we go down this path of preserving, quote unquote, affordable units, I think it's incumbent of the city to go down the pathway of ensuring that if the things haven't been done over the past 20, 30 years, that at least in this deal they get done. And that's not the case here. This new owner is not going to come in and pay an inflated rate to then go and fix the units up if they're not required to do so. It just doesn't, that math doesn't math. It doesn't pencil out to make sense. Another concern I have is when we constantly talk about the idea of preserving affordability. I kind of talked about it earlier. The reality is this part of the city will always be affordable until there's some significant changes because it's just a makeup. So market rate here is already affordable. This is not a mixture of 50% to 80% AMI. This is 50% and below. I would like to see the percentage of what's below 50% AMI. So this is the definition of concentrating poverty. This is the definition of what we constantly talk about when we say driving a more equitable city, driving more equitable communities, building our best communities. This is the poster child of what we do not need as a city, as a community, but more importantly, as the residents that are stuck there. And the city coming in and sweetening the deal to provide a pilot, revising a pilot to, again, incentivize this new owner at the tune of $300,000 out of our tax revenue. And as we go down this pathway of this budget is extremely concerning to me. It's not the first time this board has taken up an issue like this. Again, a couple months ago, we took up the same exact issue with the same exact purchaser. It seems like this is just kind of their business case for the city of Baltimore at this point. It seems like we're setting a precedent for them to come in and revise pilots for conditions of squalor for our residents with no agreement to fix up the units. I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, the $5-point-some million, but when we talk about, whether it's windows, whether it's roofs, whether it's repointing of brick for these 4 large buildings of 508 units, $5.5 million does not go far. It does not go to, again, the living conditions that our residents are trapped in. I think this is a really, really, really bad precedent for our city. We've done this a couple times. I speak about it at the pilot committee. There's no one on the pilot committee team in DHCD that doesn't understand and know my concerns before we put it in front of this board. Again, we've done this a couple times. It seems like we're doing it more and more lately. And again, I just want to emphatically state for the record, I have deep concerns about us taking this approach. I do not understand the but-for analysis. I don't understand how this benefits the city, nor the 508 families that are trapped in these types of conditions. With that, Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning again. In the previous pilot project, Foxwell, you had mentioned that along with the pilot, we were also providing a grant from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Is there any other city subsidy going into this project other than the pilot?
No.
So, okay. And how big was the grant from the trust fund?
$1 million.
Because I am noting there's a really stark difference between these two projects in terms of with Foxwell, 60% of the project cost is going into renovations, and in this Westview project, only 20% is going into renovations. So I am sympathetic to the council president's concerns that we would be supporting this project as heavily as we are, given the relatively little new investment that is being made into the project. The overwhelming percentage of this is purchase price. I also am incredibly sympathetic to the argument that you're technically not required to do this to maintain affordable housing in this location because market rate is affordable in this location already. And if this project didn't happen and the owner of these buildings wasn't being offered $35 million to turn them over, just because the first of the affordable housing arrangements is about to expire doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to sell them, they're going to be able to rent them above affordable housing levels unless they do the reinvestment in them to earn better rents. And A, they clearly have shown no predilection for doing that already. And B, when they sought out a buyer, they sought out a buyer like themselves who was not particularly interested in fixing the units up any more than they already are. But the reason I'm especially sympathetic about that concern is when I worked in community development, one of the great frustrations we felt in Patterson Park CDC was we had a portfolio of 100 rental houses that we were renting at affordable rates because the neighborhoods were, such that that market rate was affordable. They were owned by a nonprofit, and yet the state repeatedly rejected any efforts on our behalf to get property tax help on them because they said, well, they're market rate, so it doesn't matter that market rate is also affordable. You're renting them in market rate, so it's just a regular commercial property. And that, I guess, is something I've never fully processed. I mentioned that to say that at a previous meeting, I expressed that I shared the council president's concerns about affordability when we were talking about the fixed price policy. But my personal opinion was that that wasn't the best vehicle to address those concerns. I don't know that I can say that about an affordable housing pilot. Like, we have it within our capabilities, if we chose, to require people to put a more substantial investment into fixing up units before we agree to continue to not charge them property taxes. Essentially, before we continue to subsidize this project for $300,000 a year in perpetuity, we could say, well, you're going to have to at least make sure that the units are nice so that people can be living in a more dignified environment. And so I guess I'm seeing the president's point that I don't understand why we're not doing that. Like, why wouldn't we make the same level of investment a requirement across the board that Foxwell is doing voluntarily?
That's a good question. I would want to go back to check the state code that the affordable housing pilots are under, because there's specific threshold. And I don't know from a legal standpoint if for these that we can make that level of requirement. But I would say that I will have my team and we'll go back and evaluate that.
Mr. Mayor, could we defer this and take some time and find out if it's within our power to require more investment? Okay. I would move to defer this for 2 meetings.
There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly second to defer this for 2 meetings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item will be deferred. I'll ask the board if you guys are interested in taking a field trip. Maybe we can all go as a board, and maybe housing, to go and look at some of the units that we are voting on in 2 weeks. So I'll schedule that and arrange that if folks are interested in coming with me to West Baltimore.
If we go as a board, it has to be a public meeting.
Oh, that's a good point. We'll figure the logistics out. Let me know if you guys are interested. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 118, SB 24100916, Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs. This request is to approve the termination of an agreement with Pride Center of Maryland. A protest received by the Pride Center of Maryland has been taken on by this board, and we will hear from them. On behalf of the Mayor's Office of Recovery, we have.
Good morning, Council President, Comptroller Henry, Mayor Scott, and members of the board. I'm Shemaya Kearney. I'm the Chief Recovery Officer for the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs. The Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs was established with the sole mission to monitor, track, and report the city's use of $641 billion in American Rescue Plan Act funds. As custodians of federal funds, Baltimore City is committed to ensuring responsible allocation and utilization. In alignment with this responsibility, this administration, through the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, may find it necessary to make challenging decisions regarding terminating grants should organizations not comply with regulatory standards or grant agreement provisions. It is imperative to note that any instance of noncompliance, even if stemming from the actions of our funding recipients, poses a significant risk to our ability to access future federal funding and may require repayment of allocated funds. ARPA funding recipients have varying levels of internal controls, grant management experience, and financial and business acumen. Accordingly, to help funding recipients successfully implement their federal grant award, the Recovery Office created robust monitoring processes and procedures, conducted trainings, and developed guidance to help funding recipients understand their compliance responsibilities. The Recovery Office has the unique role of serving as both a grantor and a compliance arm, conducting monitoring activities as required by the Federal Code of Regulations, and reporting on project progress and associated expenditures to the U.S. Department of Treasury as required by grant rules. The monitoring and compliance framework that we developed allows for more real-time understanding of how funds are being used and any associated challenges. Accordingly, when challenges are observed, we try our best to work with funding recipients to overcome those challenges before our last resort of grant termination. In fact, prior to this BOE meeting, the Recovery Office has engaged with the Pride Center at least 14 times through training, meetings to provide ad hoc technical assistance, and regularly scheduled performance progress meetings in accordance with our monitoring schedule. However, today we seek to terminate the grant with the Pride Center of Maryland on the grounds of inconsistent and late reporting of required performance measure data and duplication of benefits. The Recovery Office entered into a grant agreement with the Pride Center to provide a violence intervention program with the goal of preventing violence, particularly against sexual and gender minority populations in Baltimore City. The grant term was from October 19, 2022 through June 30, 2024, and the full grant award was for $500,000 to be dispersed in 2 installments, with one disbursement of $250,000 completed. The grant agreement with the Pride Center, as approved by the BOE, requires that performance reports and associated data are submitted to the Recovery Office monthly and that performance progress meetings are to occur quarterly. In addition, in accordance with our subrecipient monitoring process, we completed a monitoring report of the organization to review internal controls, spending and income tracking, and third-party monitoring and management. Based on this review, our monitoring activities identified 17 findings. The organization was asked to prepare a corrective action plan to mitigate the findings from the monitoring report. In response, the organization submitted a corrective action plan that addressed just 1 out of the 17 findings. In addition, the monitoring team conducted a review of documentation submitted to the Recovery Office to support and substantiate reported performance data. In 2 separate efforts, the monitoring team was unable to fully validate data for 4 performance measures. More specifically, for the measure cumulative number of participants who showed increased knowledge of intimate partner violence, the funding recipient reported 549 participants showing increased knowledge of IPV. However, the monitoring team could only validate that 176 individuals participated in tests as part of a training that covers topics on IPV. Accordingly, the monitoring team determined that this measure could not be validated. The second ground for termination is the duplication of benefits. As stated in ARPA's State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund guidance, as a general matter, recipients may not claim use of federal financial assistance to cover a cost that the recipient is covering with another federal award. The Pride Center received 2 other ARPA-funded grants, one from MONSI for trauma-informed care and another from MOHS to provide rental assistance and support services to 10 households experiencing homelessness. In response to a documentation request in September of 2023, the Pride Center sent MOHS invoices as a part of the Recovery Office's monitoring process for the VIP project, which was funded by the Recovery Office grant. In November 2023, in response to a request for information to verify trainings funded by the Recovery Office's grant, the Pride Center sent event flyers noting MONSI as a sponsor and with the agency's and with MONSI's logo. The Recovery Office cited concerns about a duplication of benefits on several occasions. In Pride Center's corrective action plan, its response to the notice of default, and the statement of opposition to the grant termination BOE agenda item. In 3 separate opportunities, the organization has never addressed this concern or provided documentation to counter this concern. In closing, I just want to say that I find no pleasure in bringing this matter to the board in such a public forum. In fact, I'd just like to do the job without all of the media attention. However, while this action has been called unfortunate, unjust, and petty, this action is being taken to demonstrate accountability and integrity. The level of scrutiny on ARPA funds is high. Therefore, the city must demonstrate its commitment to effective subrecipient monitoring and its best effort to be a good steward of federal resources. I'll take any questions that you have, or do we go to statement?
Thank you, Madam Director. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Mayor?
Just one question, Director. Can you talk a little bit more for the general public about the subrecipient monitoring process that your office has?
Sure. So again, as required by law, we are supposed to do subrecipient monitoring. That includes a risk assessment that identifies whether an organization is low, medium, or high risk. Based on that risk assessment, we determine the frequency in which we will monitor an organization. In this case, the Pride Center was designated as medium high risk, and so that required a monthly monitoring or monthly submission of reports as well as quarterly meetings. Those monthly reports are to include expenditures so that we can track data on how money is being spent, as well as any progress or challenges in implementing the project. We also worked with our monitoring team through our consultants, who also worked with us to prepare a monitoring report, which identified the areas that I covered around spending and tracking, internal controls, et cetera. Based on the findings from that report, we then provide the organization an opportunity to prepare a corrective action plan. As a part of that corrective action plan, that is the organization's effort or letting us know that what they plan to do to mitigate those findings. Again, as mentioned in my statement, the corrective action plan that we received only addressed one of the 17 findings that we identified as a part of the monitoring report.
Madam Director, just real quick for the record, what was the total amount of the award?
The total amount of the award from the Recovery Office was $500,000.
And of that, how much are we looking, are we clawing it back? Like, do they already have it, or how does that work?
So we advanced $250,000 as of the end of February because March books hadn't closed. They had expended about $244,000. There could potentially be a clawback as we go through expenses and identify if there are any funds that we believe should be returned to the city.
But right now, we're just specifically talking about the remainder of 256 that has not been given to the organization.
We haven't provided $250,000. So we did one disbursement of $250
Oh,
of
they
that.
said 244, I'm sorry.
Yes, of that, they've spent $244 based on expense reports that we've received.
Got it.
The second disbursement, we did not disperse because of some of these concerns.
So our actions today would be halting that 250 that they expect to receive.
We've already halted the $250. The action today would be to terminate the grant so that we would not be responsible for paying the remainder.
Got it. Appreciate that. Mr. Comptroller, anybody else? Are there any other questions, concerns on the board? At this time, thank you, Madam Director. Might call you back up depending on next. We do have a protest from Pride Center of Maryland. On behalf of the protest, we have Dr. Cleo Manago? Manago. Statement of opposition. Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
President, Mayor, Board. I have never been in this process. I don't know what your protocol was. We do have copies of what I'm going to present to hand to you. Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
Different from what I planned, I want to reiterate the purpose or the reason for the termination that was just articulated by Ms. Kearney. You will find that on let's see, on which page is this? I reiterate, you'll find it on page 5. She also articulated a number that I wasn't familiar with of 17, for lack of a better term, charges, but we're only aware of the 12 that are in the public document. There's a public document that lists 12 metric requests that were made, and these are the 2 reasons for termination that's also on the record that was sent to you all that back up their perspective of why the grant should be suspended. So I'm going to reiterate that because it's contextually important before I go forward. They said that PCOM failed to provide sufficient documentation to demonstrate that the cumulative number of participants who showed an increased knowledge of intimate partner violence was near or equal to the number of participants reported to the Recovery Office. That's the first thing. B, they said PCOM has failed to provide a response and documentation in a timely manner that demonstrates it has not duplicated ARPA, SLFRF benefits provided by the Recovery Office, et cetera. These are the 2 reasons that they have put forth to terminate the proposal. So I just want to underscore that. In case people do not know much about the Pride Center, I'm going to give a short summary about who we are. The Pride Center of Maryland provides a myriad of programs and services for the LGBT spectrum and same-gender loving individuals and families. Services include prevention and care programs, mental health, violence prevention and support services, trauma-informed care, cultural competency training, and youth, elder, adult, transgender, and non-binary focused programming. PCOM advocates for equity, justice, and safe access to well-being and protection while building bridges and understanding between diverse communities. As of today, the Pride Center has served more than 72,000 individuals, hosting the Pride Festival of Baltimore, various social events, support groups, health and wellness initiatives. Now let's get to VIP in particular, the Violence Intervention and Prevention Program that's a partnership with the Morph Office. The VIP program has monthly events and ongoing services to provide evidence-based interventions to prevent and address violence within a diverse section of gender minority population. Members are provided with an array of resources, including violence intervention and prevention programs, intimate partner violence, services, case management, and employment opportunities, and conflict mediation resources. During our last fiscal year, in partnership with the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, the Pride Center of Maryland served over 1,330 unduplicated individuals in the violence prevention and program alone. We serve thousands and all the other programs that we have as well, but this is what we serve in this program in particular. This number does not include the thousands reached through community awareness campaigns on social media and during the very large Pride Festival of Baltimore. However, and this is key, despite PCOM's capacity to perform at a high level and serve our community, a data-related disaster occurred in the fall of 2023. PCOM personnel delivered a subpar data set to the mayor's office, and they were justifiably appalled by what they received. And I was as well, once I reviewed the information. The information had been submitted without my review. I had no idea what had occurred, and it was sent to you all before, sent to them, I should say, before it was reviewed. On November 28th, and this was put in writing in an email communication, I responded to Moore's legitimate concerns with the following excerpt. Due to PCOM's rapid growth and an always increasing demand for our services, including the popular VIP project, the necessity to adjust our culture and hire, prepare, change, or improve personnel has been a process not without challenge. Yet we have been up to the challenge as a result of assessments by the MORP office and my own assessments. The discrepancies identified will never happen again, or likely never happen again. Unfortunately, I did not micromanage or see the performance metrics reports before they were submitted and was unaware of their inadequate and subpar condition. I profusely apologize. Lessons learned. This won't happen again. We're in the process of preparing a more useful and adequate performance metrics report to replace the one that was submitted. Corrective actions will include corrective action will include going forward that I will review every performance metric report submitted to your office. Also, personnel that previously were involved in preparing these reports will be changed, and we will submit reports on time. Regarding your fiscal concerns, and this is important too in terms of the complaint about us being late, et cetera. Regarding your fiscal concerns, we are submitting the requested documentation today before the November 30th, 2023 due date. This was delivered early. We're also preparing a more precise and substantiated performance metrics report and a formal corrective action plan, likely submitted before the December 13th, 2023, 5 p.m. EST deadline. Now, that particular deadline was interrupted because one of the people that were working on it with us was having a baby and was pregnant and had to suddenly leave to have that child. So in response to their original request, a second data report and a corrective action plan was submitted to Ms. Shania's office. The Mayor's Office of Recovery sent the Pride Center of Maryland a monitor report request for information requesting supporting documentation for 12, not 17 as was articulated, but for 12 performance indicators. In response, PCOM emailed supporting documentation to MORP. The submitted performance metrics and outcomes are as follows. A cumulative number of unduplicated section gender minority populations, we projected that we would serve 1,000. We were able to serve, before the grant period was over, 1,350 people out of 1,000 people projected. The cumulative number of African Americans we expected to serve in this project was 500. We served 976. The accumulated number of individuals recruited into our membership services program, we sent them 588. But after doing a re-review of our data, we realized that that number was different, and it's more like 1,300. Excuse me.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Two questions. Sure. One is, I'm just trying to follow the timeline of this. When were these metrics shared with the Office of Recovery Programs?
The actual date. I believe that was in January of this year.
Okay, so the metric, so
the
first part that you read from November 28th was prose that was submitted before the November 30th date.
Yes.
These metrics were submitted sometime in January of 24.
Yes.
Okay. Then the second question I had was, you appear to be reading verbatim from what you've just presented to us.
Yes.
If you've presented it to us, you don't have to read it all out loud. You can just tell us which parts you think are particularly salient to the argument you're making.
Sure. Well, the context in terms of why I'm mentioning this, and I can move on, is that these are the metrics, once they got the functional data set as opposed to the dysfunctional data set that I initially got that I was appalled by as well, that was embarrassing, frankly. They got these metrics.
Okay.
They received these metrics. And the first 11 metrics, they did not respond to, implying that there was no issue. They didn't say anything about them. They said something about one metric, which was the IPV, the intimate partner violence metric. One thing that's important is that they wanted, we had a meeting with them, we told them that this is a lot of data. We have an exorbitant amount of data. And they wanted us to submit it all electronically. And we would prefer to do it the way we did with another one of your offices, which is bring all the data in paper because there could be complications. And as a matter of fact, they were. They had to call us back and say, this file won't open, and those kind of issues that happen when you send a large vat of stuff electronically. But that's what they requested. That's what we tried to respond to. So what I'm going to do, inspired by your suggestion, is go back to I'm going to underscore something. There were 12 metrics that they requested that we respond to. We responded to all 12. 11 apparently passed the muster because there was no critique of those. And the one that they didn't appreciate was the IPV metric.
Okay.
So here, in terms of their reasons for wanting to terminate, is that we failed to provide sufficient data regarding IPV. Now, as I say here in this document, I think that getting 11 right and having an allegation around the 12th one being problematic, that's really not enough of a problem to terminate a grant. If it's 3 or 4 or 5 or half that are wrong, but 11 of them were fine. There's only this one that they found an issue with, which we believe was connected to the electronic delivery of the information. So to me, that's an inadequate reason to, 11 out of 12 were sufficiently delivered. So why are we trying to close a high-performance grant over one issue? Let's go to B. Now, this one is real important. I have an articulated statement in the document that you can read on your own, but the bottom line is, when we first saw in Ms. Kearney's information a reference to duplication, I called and said, let's meet about this, because I had no idea what they were referring to, because there's absolutely no duplication. So when we finally talked to them, she brought up some flyers. We submitted the flyers not as data. We submitted the flyers to show our promotional activities, how we have promoted our violence program, so they could see some promotional material, not as data, because they didn't request the flyers. Matter of fact, the flyers are not even in the metrics. However, if the flyers are not part of the metrics, they want to use a non-metric item to justify terminating the grant, if you go by this document. Because what it says here under B is PCOM has failed to provide a response and documentation in a timely manner that demonstrates it has not duplicated ARPA, et cetera, benefits provided by the Recovery Office, et cetera. Well, we asked them very clearly, what duplication? I mean, I'm crystal clear on the 3 divisions of this grant that we have and how they work. So I said, what? And she mentioned the flyers. And she mentioned, as she stated during her presentation, that some of the flyers that she sent mentioned another office. Okay. Well, we have flyers that were not sent that don't mention another office. However, regardless of what the flyers say at the bottom of them, I don't see what she's meaning by duplication. There is no duplication at all. When I asked them what that meant, I was referred to, I asked for a meeting. Instead of meeting with me during my initial request, she sent me another email, kind of not really wanting to meet and saying for us to go to some documentation, that's on one of these pages, to review the duplication concerns in the criteria. We did that, and we still didn't understand this flyer, why this correlation with the flyers was being made regarding this so-called duplication. Duplication would be if we duplicated something in the VIP grant in another grant for TIC or for the transitional housing work. That did not occur. And they don't have on record or verbally their own articulation of what duplication means. So we could not bring them proof of something that was not making sense to us. what do you mean by duplication? There was no duplication. I've been administrating federal grants for 30 years. We have several federal grants right now. We understand the importance of federal guidelines and appropriately being stewards of these funds. This is not a new process. But I think some things are relatively new for this office, and I'm gonna get into that in a moment. But I just want, before I leave that, I just want to reiterate that we don't get the duplication accusation. And I'm recommending that the Board of Estimates investigate this duplication claim before making a final decision. Investigate it yourself and see if it makes sense why the term duplication is even being used, because it makes no sense. So again, we did not prove that we weren't duplicating because we weren't even given any clear explanation for what duplication meant.
Sir, so I can just be clear and understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to hear and understand is you're saying that how you provide services, you have initiatives and programs, that you can receive multiple institutions, multiple grantees to provide funding for those same sort of services and programs, and that's
No,
not duplication.
I'm not saying that.
You're not saying that?
Not at all.
So you're saying that,
Matter of fact, I said the opposite a moment ago.
oh, okay, because it's my understanding that that can take place. That's why I was trying to go down that pathway, that if you have services for, say, IPV, that maybe the city of Baltimore is not the only grantee providing you money for those types of services that you're providing. That's what I thought you were saying.
No, I'm sorry for being.
I mean, no, it's not. I was just trying to
Let me be
put
clear.
some dots together.
Sure, let me be clear what I was saying.
Your IPV program was only money from the city
Absolutely.
through ARPA.
Absolutely. When I brought in other agencies to mention that we are used to being stewards of federal grants. That's why I brought it up.
I guess the question is around the flyer, though. It didn't mention ARPA, but I guess it mentioned another entity. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Explain the confusion there.
Okay, do you have a copy of the agenda for one of our workshops?
It's up here.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah. They put
Okay.
it on-
All right, great. This will explain it to you. And I have to go back to some things that I think are political, and I'm not sure I'm going to have time to get into
And
it.
Dr. Cleo, and to the board, obviously, when a grant like this, we're deciding to cancel the contract, has a tremendous amount of reputational
Absolutely.
damage. So that's why I
That's why I'm
think to
here.
the board, it's important that we allow you the ability to communicate your entire questions, concerns, protests, objections. So I just want to be very clear about this process and what we're doing
I
here.
appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
On June 30th of 2023, I believe it was, we got a letter from the mayor's office alerting us that we were funded for $1.3 million for our VIP project. We were also invited to some building, I forgot what building it was, where I finally met the mayor, who made a public announcement about everyone, all the nonprofits who received resources. And it was put in the newspaper every place that we were going to receive $1.3 million. Soon after that, because as far as we're concerned, once the mayor says it, once it's in the paper, it's real. It's a real thing. So based on that assumption or deduction, we started putting out ads to hire people to further develop our staff. We started getting into training processes. We started to get ramping up to do this project that we were extremely excited about. Well, about maybe a month, and my numbers might be a little off, we got a call from Ms. Kearney saying the grant is now $500,000. And of course, we were shocked because we had already invested resources based on what we were told and what was the public record and what the mayor announced. So my question was, as I got through my shock, which I did as quick as I could, why? And I got no, kind of was the answer. So we had to go back and prepare, possibly let partners go, et cetera. So my point in mentioning in this is that the project was kind of disturbed from the very beginning. My second point, which is built off a presumption that I admit that I made, was suddenly we had a resource from the other office, the MOH, I forget all these alphabets this morning, office, to do trauma-informed care services. Now, I am a behavioral health expert and a cultural expert. It's very logical for trauma-informed care and violence intervention and prevention work to be side by side. The reason I delivered to you that workshop agenda, because you'll see how we do the work. I'm not sure if everybody knows what TIC is or what trauma-informed care consists of, but one of the goals of trauma-informed care is to teach other agencies, other individuals, how to reduce trauma and create access for these populations, and how to create a host for services that will be conducive to their accessing them. Also, people who are victims of violence in the LGBT same-gender loving community often do not seek violence intervention services because they're fearful of backlash or being judged for who they are. So part of our work is to make sure that victims of violence get services and that the service providers know how to do it. So as you can see in that agenda, and it's very normal, we will have the first part of our day focusing on violence intervention, both locally, sometimes globally. We look at science, et cetera. And then the next part of the day, we'll look at trauma-informed care and access to services and the importance of creating safe space for sexual and gender minority population to seek services. So there is a natural connection between the two things. Now, the presumption I made, which I was wrong apparently, was that, okay, the mayor's office knows this. That's why they're offering us this TIC program, because it came out of nowhere. As I mentioned, at the risk of being redundant, we were simply funded initially for the violence intervention program, not a trauma-informed care program, but we welcomed it when it came because we know to do that work, and that's part of my expertise, as well as other professionals on my staff. So getting back to this thing here on B, it's two projects that on some occasions do things together and on many occasions do things separately. I mean, we've gotten asked by the Baltimore cities and by schools, et cetera, to just focus on trauma-informed care for them. We've got asked by different entities, government agencies, to just focus on violence and prevention. And then we've done things at our own organization that covers both. But when it comes to the resources, they're not. They're separate staff, separate people that do separate things. There is no duplication. There is people, that, frankly, though, who do work on both projects, but they do different work on both projects. It is not unusual for somebody to be on more than one grant, depending on what their work is focused on. But I want to underscore, Ms. Kearney's explanation or context in which she raised the duplication issue was built around flyers. And that's what she said. And when we asked about, okay, what does that have to do with duplication, we would refer to some pages in the ARPA criteria. And it just was not making sense to us. So we could not prove, quote unquote, there was duplication because we did not have enough material to do that. And I want to reiterate before I leave here that I would like for you all to investigate this duplication assertion to see what's going on for yourselves. And I promise you, you're going to go, there's no duplication, because there is not. And flyers is just a strange approach to the issue. So in closing, I want to reiterate that 11 out of the 12 items that they had issues with were covered and were fine, and that data that was submitted to them that you also have access to is in that graph that's in this document. And we don't understand the duplication thing. I understand logically that if we send a flyer to them for VIP and they saw MOH, you know, the other acronym on there, they would go, where are we? That's a legitimate question. It has nothing to do with duplication, though. And the flyers were not part of the metrics. They were not something that we were being measured for. We hope to continue our work on this project. It has been highly disrupted. We were on a roll. We have served hundreds of people. This is one of our most popular projects at the agency because this community, before we did this, had no focus for it in particular around violence prevention. It never had a unique focus that was particular to sexual and gender minorities before, and everybody's been rallying around us, excited about it from an external community perspective and an internal community perspective, and we hope to continue the relationship. The other grant that we have, the TIC grant, is doing fine. The data, there's been no issues, and we hope that this particular project gets the same treatment.
Thank you, Dr. Cleo. Madam Solicitor?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cleo. I just have a couple points and questions. You mentioned several times that it's one issue out of the 12 factors that you believe that this is, the termination is based on. However, when you're looking at the IPV, I just want to be sure that you're acknowledging that the question from the Recovery Office and Director Kearney was not whether you had performed that actual service, but the actual participants that you stated had received that did not match up with the funding that was there. Are you acknowledging the funding that you're saying you spent the recovery dollars on for the amount of people that were served in that particular program? Meaning the IPV, whatever workshop that you're saying was conducted, the participants that you alleged were at that event and received and participated in that event did not match up with the ones that you alleged were reported to the Recovery Office, meaning that if you said 100 people received service, then the Recovery Office is saying they only had 50. I don't know the specific numbers, we can get into them, but I'm saying that those numbers didn't match up. Not that you didn't perform the service, but that the numbers didn't match up. Are you acknowledging that the participants that you stated to the Recovery Office did not match up what you actually had in terms of records of saying that they received or participated in that workshop? Are you acknowledging that?
What I'm acknowledging is that I believe that there was an electronic glitch in sending this huge package by email and by Google Drive and those kind of things to them interfered with the data, with the quality of the data. They did ask for a resend of some information because they couldn't open it. And I think that, as a matter of fact, we reviewed what was sent to their office and realized there were some glitches. There's some missing material that they may not have gotten because of this glitch. But I still say that there was performance. I get it. I mean, if it looks like you did not serve as many people as you said that you served, I understand the discrepancy there. And I still believe that that's still not enough to one thing that I didn't talk about, that I wrote, but I didn't talk about because I forgot about it trying to get through this, is that, and this is an example of the point, and this is part of what ARPA expects. When we ask for technical assistance or a interpretation of this concern around duplication and ask for, quote, help directly from the office around, we don't understand what you mean. We were, as far as I'm concerned, kind of dismissed and said, well, read the information. We read the information. We asked for another meeting, and they basically said, the information is already clear in the docket. And I said, it's not. We don't understand this flyer. We're not getting it.
That's the second point.
So we didn't get any. There was no, with other funders, and I hate to be comparative, but with other funders where there was any kind of concern, there was a real interest, even in the mayor's office, frankly, in making it work. Cooperating with each other, trying to get it done so we can make sure we're serving the community properly and good stewardship is occurring. This wasn't like that. I mean, even with my apology, it wasn't received seemingly with any acknowledgement. It was like, look, it was not any back and forth in terms of let's resolve this. It was like, look, read the paper. We sent you the stuff. And there was apprehension to some of the meetings I wanted to have. But I still say that 11 out of 12 is not a good enough number to terminate a grant. Even if what you're saying has some truth around what they received in terms of the numbers that are reported for IPV.
And you recognize that this is a federal obligation, so It's not a discretionary where they're saying, as long as you meet some of the federal requirements, it's okay. So it's not up to what I'm saying is that is a federal requirement. They have to conduct oversight. So that's a federal requirement. So it's not just, it's 11 out of 12. But I do want to highlight that even if it's a technical glitch, if there is a question of the participants, so like you said, you went to their office, if you had the documentation to say that the participants that you service were actually the number that you say you service,
have-
you can provide, but within the cure period, you're saying that you provided that within the cure period and the recovery office did not acknowledge that, even though you're saying that there was a technical glitch, you did not back that up with what was your actual hard proof? Is that what
Well,
you're saying? You didn't do that within
Well,
the
there
cure
was-
period?
This was kind of like, for lack of a better term, everything was being hit. I mean, we were being hit with the different things. It was difficult to come up for air and consider the things that you're talking about because it was like bam, bam, bam. However, what I said, which I'm not sure you heard, but maybe you did, and let me preface before that, is that I understand what you're saying about the delivering what you said you're going to deliver and the federal responsibility of that. But I want to underscore that this project wasn't finished. We're still involved in this process. We're still doing the work.
But this is something you already reported as finished. See, that's the key. You're reporting it to the recovery office. I'm just reading the notice of default. It's saying that what you reported to the recovery office does not match the proof
That's clear
that
to
you are, that is something that is required, and they are required to look at that, right? So that's one thing, but I do want to get to the other point, but I just want to highlight that isn't just something they can gloss over as you, after coaching, you hit the other 11, and then on the 12th, that just shouldn't be enough. But I do want to point out this duplication where you stated that Director Kearney and Recovery Office only highlighted the flyers as the evidence of the duplication. However, I'm looking at the notice, the official notice, where she is highlighting an Excel spreadsheet that you provided where the ARPA dollars are from the recovery office, but the dollars actually for, I think it's for something from September 19th, 2023, where the monitoring team's request for you to provide a complete list of all expenditures paid to date from the ARPA grant from the recovery office, that these funds, she's basing it on an Excel file received by you. It's not just flyers. This was in September 19th. The flyers didn't come into place until November 17th. So that was just a further indication of the duplication efforts. And this is pretty much spelled out what the issues are. Were you able to provide that documentation to show that the expenditures for the Excel spreadsheet that you provided on September 19th were actually paid with that money? Is that something that you cured? Because this is very specific. It's not just flyers.
Ms. Thompson, the simple answer to your question is yes. And let me give some context. I believe if there was a problem with that and that wasn't resolved, it would have been part of how they justified termination. They're not mentioning that.
They reference it.
They're mentioning, it's right here. It says, this is what's in the letter of termination. These are the reasons for the termination of the grant. It's right here. Failed to provide a response to documentation in a timely manner. There's a quote in this document that again, going by the comptroller's concern about me reading verbatim, that I didn't reference. But it's here, where I have in Ms. Kearney's writing, what she said about what the duplication issue was. It's right here. And what you're raising is not being brought up to us as the issue. That was brought up in the past, but we resolved it and we showed the material, and it's not part of what we have here.
She references in her March 8th letter, notice of termination, it references the notice of default dated January 19th, 2024, which is the letter that I'm reading that outlines specifically that the Excel spreadsheet as one of the factors. It's also listing the flyers, but it's also listing the Excel spreadsheet that contains all of the information that you required or that you supplied that did not match up the actual funds from the recovery office. It was actually from Muncie. So that's referenced. All I'm saying is that her termination letter is referencing her notice of default that you did not cure, and she's referencing that. So that's inclusive, is what I'm saying, Just because it's not spelled out here, she's referencing back saying that you failed to cure it. And that because you failed to cure it, she has the option to terminate upon board's approval.
And I'm reiterating the importance of you doing your own investigation. Because we addressed that, we resolved that, and never heard about it again. And when we were asked to produce something, it was along the lines of the things that are in the public record that are here under A and B. It didn't mention that, and it's in her writing here. Let me see if I can find it, because I knew I could find it if I was actually reading, but I stopped reading, so now I have to look for it. But I must find it. Okay, I found it. This is on page 3, near the bottom. It says, for clarification, we requested another meeting with Morb stating, as we are not clear particularly regarding your duplication concern, we would like to meet with you and our grants manager at your earliest convenience. Apparently, preferring not to discuss it in real time, Ms. Kearney responded in a January 22nd, 2024 email stating, in quotes, this is from her, there's a finding in the PCOM monitoring report that refers to duplication of benefits. However, this text refers to the supplemental documentation that was presented to our office by Ms. Reynolds on December 2023 in response to our request for documentation that would support performance measure data submitted to our office. It doesn't mention fiscal data. Specifically, there were several flyers that were sent to us where MONS is specifically mentioned as a sponsor. It was unclear to us how those event flyers demonstrate or provide support for the performance measures that was submitted to us for a VIP program for the recovery funds. For more information on duplication of benefits, please see PDF pages 7 through 18 and 32 of the desk reference on our Job Aids website. If you need access to that information, Lauren can provide it to you. If you still have questions after reviewing the report, the flyers submitted to our office and the desk reference, please let us know and we'd be happy to schedule a meeting, and we did. This doesn't mention that, because if that mentioned that in particular, and we needed to go back to that, which we thought was a finished issue, we would have went back to that, but we thought that was not brought up anymore, and we figured that was already resolved. This is right. This is a letter from her in terms of what her concerns were, and it doesn't mention what you just mentioned.
I'm looking at your depiction of it. I do not know that that is an actual letter from, I won't speak for Director Kearney, but what we have is a printout here. I don't see an actual email, but I'm sure Director Kearney will come up. But she does reference that January 19th letter in her notice of termination stating that you failed to cure the notice of default on January 19th. And that was the basis of the termination. So all I'm saying is that what's included in that January 19th, that is what she's asking us to look at today, just so in terms you're saying that it's just based on flyers. That letter outlines way more than flyers. I just wanted to make that point.
And what I'm trying to convey to you is that we responded to what information that was given to us. We responded to the request that was given to us. There are 2 request letters that we got that led to this that do not mention what you just said. And also, I'll reiterate that the public record, in terms of what describes what this meeting is about, this comes right from it in terms of why we're having this meeting today, the A and the B of this meeting. So if you would like for me to have that email sent forward to you from Ms. Kearney regarding the flyers and the reference of that in terms of the duplication concern, I'll be glad to send it to you. It's not a problem. And I want to make sure that my point is that if I knew that was something that was still on the table as a concern, which I didn't know, because I thought it was resolved because we addressed it, we would address it again if we needed to. But we were told about benefits, and I'm articulating to you as clear as a bell, there is no duplication, absolutely none. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it to you there, and that's why I'm inviting you to investigate, because I think you will see that.
I appreciate that, but I've read this, and I've read actually what she's outlined as well. I think it's pretty clear as well, but I would like to hear from Director Kearney whenever he's done.
Dr. Cleo, are you finished with your testimony? We'll provide you an opportunity to come back. Just want to make sure, so don't feel like you have to get.
For now.
You're
If I
okay.
could, I'll come back if I need to.
Thank you. Director Kearney?
Thank you. I'll make this quick for the others who have items and probably are beyond this. There are a couple of things that were noted as a part of Dr. Menengo's statements that I want to clear up for the record. There were 17 findings that were a part of the monitoring report. There were 11 findings that were a part of the questionnaire. We had additional findings. There were 6 findings that came from, one was for performance metrics, and 5 findings came from our expenditure testing. So there were 17 findings.
So, Director Kearney, just want to make it clear for the public. So, after the 12 or 11, based off the information that was provided back, through your analysis, 5 others were created that they were not responsive to.
That's correct. We had concerns about expenditures, and so we initiated some additional expenditure testing. As a result of that, there were 5 additional findings that came out of that. So 11 that were a part of the original monitoring report. Then there were 6 additional findings. 1 was related to performance metrics, and 5 were related to expenditure testing. All of that information was included in the November 17, 2023 monitoring report that we shared with the organization. In addition to that, the point was made that 11 findings were cleared. That's not necessarily completely accurate. There were 11 findings that we said were partially validated, and then there was the 1 remaining that we included as a part of the termination. And then there is a measure that is included. So all of our performance measures are codified and are included as a part of our grant agreement. There is a measure that's related to the number of trainings held. And so in support of that measure is when we received the flyers for the event flyers that had Monzi's logo on it. So they were submitted as a part of requested documentation to substantiate the number of trainings that were held by the organization. Also for the duplication of benefits, let me also back up. There was also a statement about the initial $1.3 million that we announced that was awarded to the organization. I want to note for the record that the reason why there was a difference is because we later discovered that the organization went back into our application portal and changed the amount of their request. And so we did not notice that until after we had already made the public announcement. When we went back and looked at our internal records, we recognized that our collective decision was to award the organization $500,000. However, because of a change in the portal unknown to the recovery office is why the $1.3 million was announced. Then there was also a conversation about reputational risk. Council President Mosby, I would like for you to know that we in consultation with our law department, suggested and asked the organization, could we do a termination for convenience, meaning that we could walk away cleanly and not have to have this public display. They were unresponsive to that request, which is why we had to bring the matter to the BOE. And then also, there was also a statement that they were unclear or don't know where the money came from for Monzi. They applied for those funds. Monzi had its own application portal for ARPA funding, and they applied for those funds. So that award amount did not come from anywhere and that they don't know where it came from. They directly applied to provide trauma-informed care as a part of the Monzi application process. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Ms. Comptroller?
Just a very general one. Did anything from Dr. Menengo's testimony cause you to reevaluate your decision to bring this grant termination before the board?
No.
Okay.
I want to be clear. I'm a former federal auditor.
Yeah.
I'll take the job seriously. This is a concern for me as a former federal auditor, as the current chief recovery officer, and as a steward of these federal funds with a high degree of scrutiny. And I just want to be, I again, don't make this decision lightly.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Madam Director, just for the record, do you know the grant amount that the organization has from Monzi and from MOHS?
I do. So from MOHS, the grant amount is $270,000, a little more than $270,000, but that grant agreement came to an end on March 31st. And then for Monzi, it is $510,000. And that grant award is supposed to extend until December 31st, 2024. But Monzi is also engaging in their own level of subrecipient monitoring.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any additional questions or concerns? We're going to call up Chief Schrock from the Solicitor's Office. I think you have some additional input on
Honorable
this.
Board of Estimates, I'm Michael Schrock, Chief of the Contracts Division, Law Department. I just wanted to make one clarification that Director Kearney said. When she talked about they offered the olive branch of a termination for convenience, it was really a mutual termination, that they would work out the terms of that. And I guess that didn't go forward, and so we're here today. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for adding that. I guess we'll provide Dr. Leo. Dr. Cleo, I'm sorry, do you have any additional last-minute closing before the board decides to defer or vote on this item?
Yes. I am requesting a copy of the determination of convenience. Is that what it was called? Is that what it was called?
I don't.
Determination.
So, Mr. Cleo, please.
Determination of convenience?
Yeah, speak directly to the board.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah, that's what it's called. I believe that there was an opportunity to do that, to come up with the terms, but either the solicitor department and the city saying you were unresponsive or unwilling to go down that path. So there is no formal document. It was just an option that was provided to you. That's what they presented to us today.
Okay, well, I've never heard that terminology before. Termination of convenience.
I guess the question is, before we got to this point where we're doing this public termination or request, did the city reach out to you to say, let's move in a different direction?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
And that's why I'm asking, because frankly, I would have welcomed that. The reason I'm here is because of what you mentioned in terms of the ramifications of this. And I didn't want to have something done publicly on the record that had, as far as I'm concerned, some problematic reasons to make this decision without me addressing them. But I would have been willing to be involved in what's being now called a termination of convenience. But there was, I don't remember that. And as stated in my material here, there was some level of dismissiveness and hostility almost, it felt like sometimes, inside of the interaction. But that's why I asked, was it in writing or where is it? But I want to underscore that the record says, and I've said this many times because Ms. Thompson went other places that we weren't guided toward. It's true that early in this process, there was a concern mentioned around finances, early. Like when the first document came, and we dealt with that and we resolved that. And
well, it appears, because I don't want to just kind of belabor the thing. It appears from Director Kearney's testimony that there were 5 additional financial concerns that were raised that I assume your response were either you were unresponsive or it was not satisfactory to the review of the Mayor's Office of Recovery Program. So I guess, we got caught up on 11 versus 12. It was only one.
Sure.
We went in detail about that one. Can you provide any additional information to the board about the 5 that Ms. Kearney brought up to us? Because I think that's probably the crux of the matter of why we're here today.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know about those 5?
I didn't know it was 5. I hadn't counted them. But I do know that there was initial concerns around finance.
Yeah, that's how I got up to 17.
And
so that was the delta between her 17 and your 12, your understanding of 12.
I'm understanding that.
All right.
But there was a lot of conversation between us, including what's written in the record. And today, I came here not expecting to even talk about that because as it's not listed here.
Are you aware of those 5?
Yeah, well, I'm aware of some initial issues that were connected to, wanted to find out some information around finances. Absolutely.
Were you responsive to those 5?
Absolutely.
So you feel as if you cured those 5?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Without a doubt.
I think Madam Solicitor has
I just wanted to make a point, just as Chief Schrock stated, that upon advice from the Law Department, Director Kearney Recovery Office did send out the termination for convenience where it would be mutual. So that did go out. I know there's now statements saying that that wasn't offered, but it absolutely was. Oh, and Chief, Oh, okay. Whenever he's done, if the chief could acknowledge that point, if it's okay.
Yeah, Michael Schrock, just to clarify that was more of a, my understanding is a communication in a meeting. There was no formal letter sent out for a mutual termination. When they had the meeting and said, these are the issues you got, and so forth, they offered out that there could be a mutual termination, and that was never followed up. So I
Just,
wanted
yeah,
to
just
clarify
confirming though that that option was presented to them
option
by the
was-
recovery office, because we advised that.
That's my understanding, that option was presented, so you're absolutely correct. And that's even an option, I was just looking in the 2 CFR regulation, and that's one of the options under the federal regulations, that if the two parties consent and agree to the conditions for terminating mutually, you can do that. And that never came about. Now,
Thank you, Mr. Schrock, Chief Schrock.
Well, nothing was put in writing.
Understood.
For that.
But do you remember the communication?
I don't remember the term. The term.
No, we're not talking, see, I don't want to get caught up in semantics. That's
No.
what I said earlier. So I guess the point is, was there an opportunity for you to meet with the
No.
Office of Recovery, and did they bring up the option? No.
No, and
Yes, sir.
it's interesting to me, her response, because she wasn't there, and I would have preferred that.
Understood.
And I would have done that if I knew it was a clear option.
Gotcha.
But I'm here today because I didn't know it was an option.
Yes, sir.
And I was concerned about the public record concerning me and the organization.
Yes, sir.
And frankly, I was always also concerned about bringing some context to A and B, which is on your public record today in terms of what sparked this meeting, not these 15 points. And I have to say, because it's the absolute truth, that we did get some concerns around some financial issues early, but we dealt with them, we resolved them, we knew there was no issue, and we turned in information, and we never heard about it again.
Gotcha.
And there's lots, and I'm willing to send it to you, there's a relatively good amount of communication between us about these issues. That was never on the table. What was on the table was the IPV,
Yes.
which is what's listed here,
Yes.
and some reference to duplication that we never understood.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to just wrap up. Mr. Cleo, whatever you want to say, however you want to,
I
your
want
final
to
statement.
request that the board consider suspending this request for termination until they investigate the duplication charge.
Okay.
And we also are willing to send you the data, but analog, we think is better than, because it's a lot of it, than sending it electronic, because we think that created some
The glitch.
some problems.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cleo.
Sure.
Director Kearney, before we adjourn or move on, are you okay? The only question is about that 5. I guess your position is that they were unresponsive or it wasn't satisfactory once you received it. I think that's an important point for the board.
So we included those five findings as a part of the monitoring report. So it was inclusive of, there was 5 that were related to expenditures, 1 related to performance measures, and then 11 from the original questionnaire monitoring report. So all that information is all shared. I don't know why that's a distinction. While what's on the public record is a summary of what was put together, but we have all of the backup documentation should the board decide that they would like to see it. Happy to provide that. In addition to that, we did provide an opportunity to terminate for convenience. We did so in consultation with the law department and prior to sending the January 19th notice of termination. We gave them the opportunity, they were unresponsive, and that is why we moved with a formal notice of termination. So, but again, I'm happy to provide any documentation that you all would like to see, documents, findings, monitoring team reports, whatever is needed for us to be able to move forward.
Thank you, Director
take it.
Kearney.
I'll take it.
Take it.
Dr. Director.
At this time, I don't know, Mr. Mayor?
No, just very quickly for Dr. Cleo, just want him to know that the city will continue to support the Pride Center on the work with Pride, obviously, but also the work with MONSE and MOHS.
At this point, any additional questions, concerns? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Move to terminate. It's been, there's a motion, it's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. I would like to explain my vote. I'm going to abstain. Obviously, this board is well aware, I vote no and all ARPA-related things. I do like to state for the record that I understand and know how important the work that the Pride Center was contracted to do, was granted to do, how important that is to our mayor and to this administration, you know, particularly as it relates to providing alternatives to helping us from a public safety perspective in marginalized or underrepresented communities. I would also want to say that I know that this action today by this mayor and the Recovery Office was not an easy one. You know, obviously, Director Kearney, through all of the hard work her team does on a regular basis, ensures that we don't get to this point, and I've seen it firsthand. I know how much scrutiny that they are under on a regular basis, so I just want to ensure that we state kind of that for the record. Unfortunately, this did not work out. Dr. Cleo, I ask that you continue to work with the city and work with the Mayor's Office of Recovery, as well as MOHS. But that's where I'll go. So I'm abstaining because, again, I do not vote for any, you know, ARPA items, and I don't think it's I don't think that it's logical for me to vote yea or nay on the termination of something I voted against. With that, we're going to move on. So that is the yeas have it, and the item is approved. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 158, SB 2411081, Department of Planning. This request is to note the Planning Commission's fiscal year 2025 capital budget and fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program. On behalf of Planning, we have...
Hi, good morning. Sarah Parnell. I'm from the Department of Planning. The city charter requires the Planning Commission to make recommendations for a 6-year capital improvement program on an annual basis. And at its March 7th meeting, the Planning Commission approved recommendations for the FY25 capital budget and the FY25 through FY30 capital improvement program. The Planning Commission recommended a total of $654,081,907 in appropriations for the FY25 capital budget and $3,711,057,043 over the 6-year program. The recommendations include $80 million in general obligation bonds for FY25, with projected increases in general obligation bonds in future years, subject to approvals. A full copy of the recommendations are available at planning.baltimorecity.gov, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? You know, I'll reserve to go to the council, but the one thing I'm always focused on is from an equity perspective, what's your lens and how is it perceived and how does it work in this current plan? But we do that every single year. You guys are probably well prepared to talk to me about that. No questions or concerns here? Hearing and seeing none, we'll note that. Thank you so much. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on page 167, SB 2410940, Department of Procurement on behalf of the Baltimore Police Department. This request is to approve emergency procurement report for ShotSpotter. On behalf of procurement, we have Mr. CPO himself.
Good morning, Mayor Scott, President Mosby, Comptroller Henry, honored board members, Adam Manning, your CPO. I'm standing before you today in reference to an emergency procurement for the ShotSpotter system. Just a little background, ShotSpotter is an end-to-end policing platform of data-driven tools that enables law enforcement to identify and respond to active gunfire or explosions. The city has been using the ShotSpotter system technology since 2018. It was originally in the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, and then in May of '22 was moved over to the Baltimore Police Department. The Baltimore Police Department was working with the Solicitor's Office to do an amendment, of course, to move it from one organization to the other. Along with that time is when we were moving, of course, from City Buy into Workday and a variety of other options going on. So this request, as we were bringing forward to you, is a combination of 4 things. First is during the time periods that I'm talking about, we were working, both the police department, the solicitor's office, and procurement to get a new contract in place, which is the next item, if I'm correct, on the agenda. And this is to the emergency request was to allow for payment of the system from July 12th of '22 through December 12th of '22, to do a contract extension from December 13th of '22 through December 12th of 2023, and then a change order to add an API subscription to it. And then the next item that you'll have will be the new contract, which will ask to be done retroactively from December 13th, and that's a 3-year contract through 2026. I won't get into the specifics of the system. I think police will hear for the next item, and they'll be able to. If not, I can get more into it. Any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. CPO. Are there any questions or concerns for procurement?
This is an emergency.
Yes, sir.
We're just noting it after the fact.
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions or concerns for CPO? Thank you so much. We truly appreciate that. This item will be noted. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 176, SB 2414869, Department of Procurement, on behalf of the Baltimore Police Department. This request is to approve the contract award with Sound Thinking Incorporated for the renewed Shot Spotter contract. On behalf of Procurement, BPD, we have Mr.
Good morning
CPO.
again. Adam
All right.
Manning, your Chief Procurement Officer. This is a request to approve a sole source contract to Sound Thinking, formerly ShotSpotter. This is a sole source request for the gunshot detection, location, and forensic services and the API services. The vendor is the exclusive provider of this system, so there's nobody else to go to. We are asking that the contract term being from December 13th of 2023 for 3 years to December 12th for 2026, for a total value of $2,128,500.
Thank you, Mr. CPO. Just for the record, is it safe to assume, since this is proprietary and has certain level of exclusivity with this particular technology and these services, that that's why this is a sole source contract?
That is correct, sir. This is a subscription service now, where when my understanding of the system, and if police is here, they can probably elaborate more, is ShotSpotter monitors everything when...
Sound Thinking.
Thank you.
No,
Sound Thinking, which was ShotSpotter, thank you, sir. When it is detected that a gunshot or an explosion, they then notify police through dispatch, and it moves forward.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns at this time? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you, Mr. CPO, for your testimony. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 270, SB 2410170, Department of Transportation. This request is to approve minor privilege permit application from Hassan Minder at 1116 West Hienberg Street. A statement of opposition was received from Eleni Markatos and Dominic Carter. On behalf of Transportation, we have...
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council President Mosby, and Controller Henry, and the rest of the board. My name is Adam Cloud. I'm the right-of-way chief for Department of Transportation. This is a matter that came before the board on the March 6th date. A statement of opposition was levied by a neighbor referencing concerns about the ability of the applicant to be able to perform the task in a safe and efficient manner based on some concerns about work that they had done at the location in the past. The applicant presented that this was something he envisioned being his home going forward, and he intended to make these changes to move into the residence at some point in the future. The minor privilege requested was removing a section of sidewalk to create a basement entrance into the residence. As DOT's stance last time, we agree that the applicant met the qualifications to present to the board for their decision. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, sir. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Mayor?
So I'll just state for the record, after hearing from DOT and hearing from the applicant and the protestant, I believe that this is not in the good order for the public, and we'll be voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any additional questions or concerns? I would like the opportunity for the applicant to come present, if you would like, as well as the protester. You had a question for DOT?
No, I'm just wondering.
Oh, totally, yeah. I mean, you come on up and, yes. We believe in full transparency and accessibility to this board. You showed up, so you should have the opportunity to speak.
My
Floor is yours.
My name is Hassan Mandar, the owner of the property. And as the DOT representative mentioned, I was here on March 6th. So this is just a minor improvement for the property, and it will not have any effect or damage or harm to the neighborhood or to the public. So that's just what I can describe.
Thank you so much for coming out and participating in the process. Are there any additional questions or concerns for members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to disallow this permit, or to, I guess, not approve it.
Second.
Yeah.
Yes, not approved.
Yeah.
Correct. I want to make sure. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is struck down and is not approved. Turning over, thank you so much for coming out and participating, sir. Walk-on items is the next thing we're going to hit to. It is walk-on, it's SB 2411226, Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. Its request is to approve governmental charitable solicitation application for Key Bridge emergency response. On behalf of the administration, we have.
Good morning, Council President, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm Catalina Rodriguez Lima. I'm the director of the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, known as MEMA. I'm here to speak about MEMA's fund to support the victims' families of last week's tragedy. MEMA, in collaboration with an immigrant nonprofit organization, has assigned dedicated case managers to assess the immediate and ongoing needs of the victims' families. These assessments will guide the allocation of financial resources raised in this fund to address the diverse needs arising from the crisis. Funds may be used for utility payments, food, childcare, medication, funeral costs, repatriation of remains, legal fees, immigration legal fees. Remaining funds will be distributed among the immediate family members of the victims based on the severity of the impact for each family, considering factors such as the age of dependents, the primary breadwinner's income, and the extent of the financial hardship incurred during the loss. The fund will accept donations until May 31st, 2024. MEMA and the Civic Fund are committed to providing regular reporting to you, stakeholders, donors, and the wider community on the use of these funds. Thank you very much for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this particular fund.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
No questions, Madam Director. I just wanted to publicly thank you and your entire team for stepping up and doing all that you have done to help these families through the most trying time of their lives. I know it's greatly appreciated by them, but we here wanted to let you guys know how much we appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Director, for the general audience that is interested in donating to the fund, how can they do so?
We will be promoting graphics after this approval in our Facebook page, social media, our website, the Civic Fund's website, and really all through our communication channels. Thank you so much for your support.
So if you could ensure that the council, all
Absolutely.
its members has the flyers and language so we can be unified in sending it out.
Absolutely.
Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. I believe, Madam Clerk, that wraps us up for the day. Is that accurate?
That was the last one, sir.
That's the last one. There's no new business before the desk of the Board of Estimates. No. We will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, April the 17th at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please stay safe. We absolutely love you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, TV25. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Board of Estimates ran a little long today, so we are just getting ourselves organized for the opening today. We have 13 bids to open, and we are going to be taking our time because we were so pressed between meetings today that we have not tagged all of the price pages, which usually lets us go a little bit faster, but we couldn't open and get organized in that way quite today. So thanks, everyone, for sitting through us being meticulous about reading numbers back and forth to each other. First, I would like to share that we have 2 addenda to announce today for the Bureau of Procurement RFQ 502, DHMO, and DPPO plans. This opening has been delayed until April 17th, 2024. And also for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 471, liquid oxygen, this opening has been delayed until April 17th, 2024. First up, we have Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 536. This is for decals and striping for city vehicles and equipment.
That is correct.
Is that what you have in your hands, Shay? Okay. So these should all be for 536, and I believe we have 2 respondents.
Yes. Up first, we have Fitch Graphics.
Are these, is this itemized, or is this a total? Okay, thank you.
And that total is 117,112.00.
Okay, that was Fitch Graphics, and the bid amount was 117,112.00.
That is correct.
$117,112.00. Do you happen to have an address for Fitch?
Yes.
I'm going to shout it out because I'll plug it in here.
This is 364 East Main Street, Suite 1413, Middletown, Delaware, 19709.
19709. Got it. Thank you. Up next.
Up next, we have Shannon Bomb Signs. And that total is 119,312.50.
That number was 119,312.50?
That is correct.
That was, the bidder was Shannon Baum Designs, and the dollar amount is $119,312.50. And that was our final of 2 bids for RFQ 536, decals and striping for city vehicles and equipment. Up next, we have for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 466. This is for an internet service provider. And we have a total, or I'm assuming a total for this bid. Yeah. And bear with us.
I don't see a total either.
It's blank.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, can I look at the
don't see a
copy?
total. Yeah, I don't see a total.
Yeah. Okay, we do have a bidder for this item, but the prices have not been totaled. Are you seeing anything yet?
No, I'm not seeing
If
anything.
we flip through, just to be sure.
Yeah.
We may not be able
no,
to
there
share
isn't.
a total, and we'll have to refer this to the agency for review. So that bidder was Cogent Communications, and we don't have a total to share, and this item will be referred to the agency for a detailed review, and that was the only bidder, the only respondent for RFQ 466, internet service provider. Thanks, Tawanda. So I just noted that this will be referred to the agency for pricing review on the sheets that we're going to publish, so folks will know what's going on. Up next, we have, for the Department of General Services, contract GS 23819. This is for City Hall roof and dome restoration, which those of us who work in the building are really going to appreciate.
All right.
We have a total?
Yes, we do. Yep. All right, so our only bidder for this item is WM Schlosser Company, Inc. And that total, just double check, yep. Yep. This one right?
Actually.
Could be the best bid,
This
actually.
should be this should be the
The
total here, 'cause
12.
they had the both of them here.
Okay.
So it's on page 110.
Yeah, if it's not on the copy, then we'll just refer the whole bundle to the agency anyway, but as long as you see a clear total.
Okay, and that total is 13, 622, 000.00.
Bear with me just a second. I typed zeros instead of zeros. Okay, that number was 13, 622, 000.00.
That is correct.
Is there a bid bond for this one? It feels like a bond kind of item.
Let's see. Listed. Oh, yes, there is. Yep.
Yep. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. That bidder was WM Schlosser Company, Inc. for $13,622,000.00. And again, that was the only bidder received for contract GS 23819, City Hall roof and dome restoration. Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have contract SC 993. Does that match what you guys are seeing?
Yes.
This is for the rehabilitation of Jones Falls Pumping Station, and I believe we have 3 bidders for this one. Take your time. It just makes it more exciting if you take more time.
I think so, yeah. All right. Up first, we have WM Schlosser Company, Inc. Okay, yep. Yeah. Oh, lump sum, lump sum.
It would probably be.
Next page.
Further back.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Subscription.
Probably that was the launch tab, but no, actually before that.
It might be before it. All right, let me just check the launch. No. Yep. Yep.
Got it?
Yes. That total is 25, 422, 000.00.
Okay, that number was 25, 422, 000.00.
That is correct.
Yep, that bidder was WM Schlosser Company, Inc. for $25,422,000.00. Up next, oh, and is there a bid, please? I'm guessing for sure.
I think there might be. Maybe towards the back.
Yes.
Thank you. If we can't find them, the agency will search for those, but it's just nice to note in our record. Thanks, you guys. Up next.
So it's just. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Up next, we have the Whiting Turner Construction Company, Inc.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Yeah, they have a bid bond.
That's gonna be,
Probably further back. Alright, yep. And that total is 17,049, 000.00.
That number is 17, comma 40, oh, sorry, let me start over. 17,049, 000.00.
That is correct.
The Whiting Turner, that bidder was the Whiting Turner Construction Company, Inc. for $17,049,000.00. And I believe we have one more.
Yes. You're fine.
so. Oh, I see, it's just, okay, yep.
All right, and we have Vilman Chute Construction, LLC. I'm sorry. And that total is 17,987, 000.00.
Okay. That number was 17,987, 000.00.
That is correct.
Can we confirm the name? That's Villeman?
It should be Ullman.
Isn't it Ulama?
Yeah, it should be Ullman.
So it should be Ulliman,
That's gonna
okay.
be in the handwriting on the-
Yeah, that's what I thought, because, so it's Ulliman. That was Ullman Schutte Construction LLC for $17,987,000.00. And yes, they have a bid bond, I think I saw. But please confirm. Okay, thank you. So that was the third of our three bidders for SC 993, rehabilitation of the Jones Falls Pumping Station. I'll give you time to carry that all the way over there. And I'll read slowly. Up next, for the Department of Public Works, we have WC 1313. This is for water main replacement and rehabilitation in the Upper Fells Point and West Canton neighborhoods. And it looks like we have 5 bidders for this one.
Yes.
And we're on the right stack, 1313?
Yes.
All right, ready when you are.
Up first, we have Spinello. Okay. That total is 723, 300.00.
Okay, that number was 723, 300.00.
That is correct.
That bidder was Spinello, and the dollar amount was $24,723,300.00.
Yes.
And can we confirm there's a bond?
Yes, it
Thank
is.
you. Up next.
Up next, we have DXI Construction, Inc. This has a bid bond.
Thank you.
And that total bid is 37,599,619.00.
Okay, that number was 37,599,619.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was DXI Construction for $37,599,619.00. And up next,
Up next, we have Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. That total is 26,980,000.00.
that number was 26,980,000.00.
That is correct.
And yes, we have a bid bond.
Just double checking. Yes, we do.
That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $26,980,000.00. Up next,
Up next, we have Civil Construction LLC. That total is 26,162,036.00.
okay, that number was 26,162. Whoops, can you read that to me again? I missed, I think it's one of my keys stuck again. It's the last set of three before the decimal.
036.
03, it's the 6th. Sorry about that. That number was 26,162,036.00.
That is correct.
Okay, and we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
So that bidder was Civil Construction LLC for $26,162,036.00. And up next,
Our final bidder is Anchor Construction Corporation. Gotcha. Okay. That total is 30,778,798.00.
okay, that number was 30,778,798.00.
That is correct.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
That bidder was Anchor Construction Corporation for $30,778,798.00. And that was the final of 5 bidders for WC 1313, water main replacement and rehabilitation in Upper Fells Point and West Canton neighborhoods. Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have WC 1327R, chlorine handling safety improvements.
We have, oh, sorry.
Sorry, whenever you're ready.
Sorry. We have one bidder, Alan Myers. And that total is 24,500,000.00.
Okay, that number was 24,500,000.00.
That is correct.
Do we have a bid bond for this one?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
And that bidder was Alan Myers, $24,500,000. Let me try that again. This is like a really straightforward one. Why can't I read that? Let me start one more time. $24,500,000 and 0 cents, right?
Yes.
Great. That bidder again was Alan Myers, $24,500,000 and 0 cents, and that was for contract WC 1327R chlorine handling safety improvements. Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have SC 1005 for the Herring Run Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration Reduction Area B. And it appears that we have no bids submitted for this contract. And we did not get an addenda to delay this one. Okay. Well, we'll be double checking on that. Contract SC 1005, Herring Run Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration. We have no bids received for this solicitation. Up next is for the Department of Transportation, TR 24001, reconstruction of footways citywide. Are we on the right one? Cool. So I think we have 2 bidders for this one.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
All right. Up first, we have Santos Construction Company, Inc. Oh, okay. So this. Okay. Yep. Right. That total is 1,355,120.00.
That number was 1,355,120.00.
That is correct.
Do we have a bid bond for this one?
Yes, we do.
That bidder was Santos Construction Company, Inc. for $1,355,120.00. And up next,
Up next, we have J Villa Construction. Okay. And that total is 798,800.00.
that number was 798,800.00.
That is correct.
That bidder was J Villa Construction for $798,800.00. And can we confirm bid bond?
We do.
Great. And I believe that was the final of 2 bidders
That's
for TR 24001, reconstruction of footways citywide. Up next for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 538, electric drive vehicles, passenger cars. And I think we have 2 bidders.
Up first, we have Waldorf Ford. Whoa. Okay. Do they have these listed? They may not have a total. Just double checking.
Yeah, take your time. They have a unit price? That might just be a unit price.
Yeah, I don't. No, there's nothing listed. I already looked at that. It's not this, is it? No.
No.
It's not that. Mm-mm.
So we may not have a total for this bid. We may only have unit pricing, which will need to be reviewed by the procurement department. And we'll verify that when we see the second bid anyway, so hang tight. That first bidder was Waldorf Ford, and we may only have unit prices, so this may be, will need to be forwarded to procurement for their review of all the unit pricing received. And we're about to confirm that for sure. The pressure's on to find the right page. It's always a mystery.
This looks like the, yeah. Yeah. This is the next one. All right. Up next, we have Tesla Inc.
And same situation?
Same
Okay.
situation, yeah.
So I will just say this out loud for folks that are paying attention to this bid, that you'll see when we publish the bids received today, that there will be a note on this sheet that says we're referring this to the agency to review unit pricing, because we don't have a total to share. But the two bidders for this item were Waldorf Ford and Tesla Incorporated. This was for contract RFQ 538, electric drive vehicles, passenger cars. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 537. This is for emergency vehicle lights and accessories. And I believe we have one bidder for this, yeah?
Yes.
And this could be another situation where you have, there's a total? Okay, cool.
Okay. Okay, thanks. We have East Coast Emergency Lighting, Inc. Yeah. And that total is 463,500.00.
Okay, that number was 463,500.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was East Coast Emergency Lighting, Inc., with a bid amount of $463,500.00, and that was our only bidder for contract RFQ 537, emergency vehicle lights and accessories. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 543. This is for, I think this is an acronym, FUSO, Mitsubishi OEM Parts and Service. Somebody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. And I believe we have one bidder for this item. Again, Mitsubishi OEM Parts and Service.
All right. Our bidder for this item is Dovell and Williams, LLC. This might be, is it this one?
B10.
Oh, B10.
Probably does.
Total bid, this one.
Part A, B.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That total is 684,000.00.
Sorry, my six stuck again. That was 684,000.00.
That is correct.
That bidder was Dovell and Williams LLC for $684,000.00. And that was for contract RFQ 543, Mitsubishi OEM Parts and Service. Up next, we have for the Bureau of Procurement RFQ 540, 30-yard mounted leaf blower.
All right, we have one bidder. It's MD Industrial Trucks, Inc.
And is this a total or a unit price? Are we just buying one of these?
Using. I don't see anything.
No total?
Mm-mm.
Folks like a few of our other items, we may only have unit pricing in this single bid for RFQ 540. So you will see on our sheets that we publicly post later today that we have referred this bid to the agency for price review. And again, that was Maryland Industrial Trucks, Inc. And we're referring this bid to the agency to review pricing, and that was for contract number 540. And this was for a 30-yard mounted leaf blower. Up next, and I think this might be our last bid, yay, is for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 128, Management of Parking Garages, Groups 1, 2, and 3. This is a Part B financial, correct? Which means that we opened qualifications earlier, possibly even quite some time ago. And we are now opening the financial part of that bid. So this was a two-part bid. So we will be listing each of the folks who previously qualified, and we're now opening their pricing. So up first we have...
Up first, we have LAZ Parking, Mid-Atlantic LLC, and that total is 738,550.25.
So that number was 738,550.25.
That is correct.
That bidder was LAZ Parking, $738,550.25. Up next.
Up next, we have SP Plus Corporation doing business as SP Plus Municipal Services. And that total is 324,000.00.
That number was 324,000.00.
That is correct.
That bidder was SP Plus Corporation, doing business as SP Plus Municipal Services, and the bid was $324,000.00. And I believe we have one more.
Okay, no problem. Our final bidder is PMS Parking, Inc. Oh, hold on. Nope. This is probably towards the back. I don't see one though.
Looks like it was itemized.
It was itemized, yeah. This looks itemized. Yep, okay.
It'll break down how the
We don't have a total for this one? Okay, we aren't able to locate a total in this bid, which is okay. It will be referred to the agency to review unit pricing and investigate for the total cost in comparison to the other bidders. So you'll see us note that we're referring this bid to the agency for pricing review. And that bidder was PMS Parking Incorporated, and that was the third of three bids, actually three Part B financial openings that we did today for RFQ 128, Management of Parking Garages, Groups 1, 2, and 3. And I believe that was our final opening today. And everybody's nodding. Yes. That was our final of 13 openings for today. Folks who are interested in these results and notes from the opening today can check the Comptroller's website. We are always posted generally by close of business unless we have a technical problem, but that is very rare. So we'll be getting that information uploaded as soon as possible, and we will see you for our next opening, which is on April 17th? April 17th, 2024. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, team, for a very smooth opening.